Hi, everybody. Marc Lawrence with PlaybookSports.com, inviting you to join us for our new YouTube channel featuring our Playbook Sports Vegas Experts Picks. Go online at YouTube.com, click the subscribe button, and watch all the videos compliments of the Playbook experts. And now let's get on with the show today.
All right, Mark. So here we go again, getting ready for. Well, actually, what we're getting ready for is the end of September. Already
Yeah, how
gone.
about fall? It's fall. Can you believe that? I love it. I walked this morning, Greg, and down here in South Florida, we get the heat for sure, as you know.
Yes.
And I've been walking all summer long. And when I wake up in the morning and go do my walk, I always ask Alexa what the temperature is. And she says, this is at like between 7 and 7:30. She says 80, 82. Well, that sounds okay. But when it's 92 and 95% humidity, it's not okay.
No,
This
and
morning,
it's
this morning after the storm passed through here, it was 74 degrees and hardly any humidity. So it was really, really nice. Gave me a little bit of taste of what fall is going to be like.
when is fall official?
That's a good question.
Is it November or
I
October?
I think it's official right now. I
Are
think,
we?
yeah, because I think I saw on my sister's Facebook page. She said something to the effect of "Thank you, fall," something to that effect.
It's on my count. Maybe it is. Maybe it happened already. It doesn't matter. I mean, it's been a cool year actually. Especially where I'm located. We did not have a very hot, long summer. So, and I knew that was the case because the groundhog told me so. So, always trust the groundhog.
I'm listening to NFL.com last night, and one of the analysts, he's a former head coach, kind of a know-it-all kind of a head coach, and his sidekick said,
Is there any other kind?
"Oh, there aren't. No,
Yeah.
especially I mean, Charlie Weiss is the worst.
Oh boy.
Unbelievable. I mean, I don't even know how he can listen to himself. But so I'm listening, and the one sidekick is talking about how, uh, by groundhog rule, this should not happen to this team. And the coach says, "Listen," he says, "I got to tell you something. We in the NFL do not believe in groundhogs or groundhog rules."
Oh yes.
So he attempted to set him straight. So
Yeah. We know how that could be. Superstitions. Well, to
exactly.
each his own.
Yeah.
Okay, so by the way, I want to let everybody know, as usual, if you have any comments at all, please leave it in the description area of our channel here on the specific show page, and we will get back to you. Especially if you have a game that you want us to handicap, whether it's this week, we can still let you know and fill in the blanks before the games begin, or we'll talk about it on next week's show if you have a specific game you want us to talk about coming up next week. I will have my college football report, and that'll be coming up before our NFL segment. And keep in mind that we have put together the markers on the bottom. So matter of fact, you can actually find out per game. So if you have a specific game that we talk about, you can just take a look at the markers and it'll tell you which game. So if you're looking for a game that we talked about, it'll be right there. Same thing with the report that I'm going to do, the college football report. If you want to zero in on that, you can go there. If you want to fast forward through that, you can just go, okay, I don't care what Greg has to say by himself. Let's pick up where the guys left off. And then we have our fantasy football report that we are going to be adding to this show. Jared Smola and Matt Schaff from Draft Sharks. Very, very reputable fantasy football firm that is a partner now at our lads. So we now will have a fantasy football report. It's going to probably be around 10 to 15 minutes, but same thing, just like my report. It'll be up there on, on the markers. If you want to take a look at it, you can. If you don't, you can just fast forward and pick up where we left off. That'll be towards the end of the show, just before we close things off on our NFL segment. Okay, so let's get started first of all here, Mark, and talk a little bit about. It was interesting. You had sent me this email regarding one of the conversations you had on an interview, and the transcript talked about. One of the questions was to bring up one of your, maybe it was like one of your all-time worst handicapping experiences. And
Bad beats, right?
yeah, and if interesting enough, last week I brought it up about like the Cal Notre Dame game, and we talked about how you get some of these crazy at the end of game situations that never seem to go your way. So I thought it was interesting that you brought up the. I found that in your transcript. It was the Northwestern Ohio State game. What year was that?
I believe it was 1996, maybe-ish, or maybe no, no, I'm sorry. I'm going to go back to 2006.
Do you know
Okay.
who, if there were any notable players?
Yeah, well, the notable player to me was Trevor Simeon, the culprit, okay, of the
Oh,
loss, the quarterback for
okay.
Northwestern. And just in a quick little recap, I don't want to go into any detail, but it was my college football play of the year. We had,
Oh, even better.
we had Northwestern plus 6.5 points, and the game was a dead coin flip with about 4 minutes to go in the game. Ohio State took a small lead in the contest. They kicked to Northwestern. Northwestern got the football with about 30 seconds to go in the game, and they were down three, getting 6.5. No timeouts. They ran one play from their own 10-yard line. They ran a hook and lateral.
Oh yeah.
And you know where those end up, don't
Oh
you?
yeah.
Yeah.
Always the other way.
In
Yeah.
the end zone, Joey Bosa falls on it for Ohio State. 10-point Ohio State victory. The only time they had the spread, by the way, when Joey Bosa was sitting on the football. And just ironically, I was doing an interview at VSiN and with Brent Musburger, and Brent Musburger happened to be calling the game that day. Okay. And he recalled it fondly because not only did he call the game, I'm sure he also had an interest in the game as well.
I wonder. So did he listen to you?
Did he listen to me?
Your pick.
Well, it was in a separate interview, I should say. I
Got
did
it.
an interview with him maybe about 4 months earlier.
I wonder if he. Yeah. I wonder. Yeah. I mean, you cannot really. You can't tell. That's what's a professional.
Right.
But yeah, that had to be something, especially if you had a lot of money on the game and lost it, and you have to broadcast it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That
Exactly.
that could be pretty hard.
What you call a bad beat, yes.
Yeah, and but just thinking about it, it's probably 2013
It could have been
because Simeon has been in the NFL now for about 6 years.
since then. So you're right.
And Bosa's been in the NFL for a few years.
If I keep thinking about it, we'll say it's 2023. Okay, but you're right. It is about 2013. You're right.
Wasn't that long ago.
Yes.
So that's probably why it's still fresh. But what happened, and the reason that I bring this up is because less than 24 hours after I'm reading that article, what happens in the Cleveland Brown Pittsburgh Steelers game at the end of the game? And I mean, I've never had that. Again, I have never won a game like that. I've only lost games like that. And I can't wait for the day when I win a game like that. Because when you're in that situation and you're losing, that is the only thing going through your mind is, all right, when there's a kickoff or whatever, you're like, oh, please pin them. We need a sack. We need a turnover. We need a pick six. We need the laterals. But
Need the miracle.
you need the miracle. But they just, when you're asking for it, they don't happen. So it happened though for Cleveland, and they took advantage. And because what was that? I forget exactly. There was another game. I'm trying to remember which one it was. When it was it was one of the prime time. I think it was I think it was that one that they were referencing because I think it was it the total that they were referencing in that one.
It was the total that is what
That was the total
on that score. Yes.
Yeah. Now I don't know why Al Michaels is worried about it. I know he's old school. Somebody needs to remind Al it's 2022, and you can actually say it.
Well, yeah, for sure. He still feels like he's under the guise of the law of the NFL.
Yeah.
But all he ever bets is totals, so that's usually what he references.
Yeah. So there you go.
And he almost always bets over. I can assure you that too.
So maybe he had it over in that one, and
Right.
he probably felt pretty good about himself. Okay. Also you had the crazy Washington State Oregon ending, and now this one actually benefited me, but it was one of those situations where I'm up and down, I'm down, I'm up. And what a crazy. So Washington State's got a 2-score lead with about 5 minutes left in the game. Oregon throws a touchdown pass, like a 50-yard touchdown pass. And now there's 3 minutes left in the game. They're still losing. And then they get the ball right back and they go down, they score. Now all of a sudden it was a quick score. Now they got the lead. So now, but if you're Washington State and it's 5 minutes left of the game, and you're getting 6, and you're up 2 scores. You're like, oh, got this one. This is over, man. Boom, boom. Washington State, pick 6, boom. And 3 touchdowns later, you are now losing the point spread with like a minute left. So your only hope is they got to march down the field, which is exactly what they were able to do. And then they scored with no time left on the clock on the very last play of the game and covered the spread.
They got the back door to cover up for the bad beat is what they did.
Yes. So it went from, and just imagine if you had Oregon, you were probably thinking you're out of it. Then miracle happened and you're actually winning. And then it gets all taken away from you.
Unbelievable. I didn't watch Scott Van Pelt, but I'm sure that was on that bad beat segment show. Unquestionably.
Okay. Did you watch a whole lot of that, or at least the second half of the Florida-Tennessee game?
I did, because we used Florida as a play in that particular football game, and really obviously felt good about getting out of it with the money in the contest. But I know you'd mentioned to me before we went on the air about Billy Napier's decision to go for 2 points, which was kind of strange.
Isn't it?
Yeah. It kind of.
That makes you think.
Well, he's down 11. He goes for 2. He's down 9. But let me say this. I did a little research on that. And from an analytics standpoint, and that's the geeky world that a lot of the people live in today, the analytics, and the analytics telling you what to do, not your heart or your gut, but your analytics.
Which tells you which side Napier's on. He's an analytics guy now.
That's exactly right. So what it says is this. Anytime you're trailing by 15 or fewer points in a football game, there are 8 times that you go for 2 points. When you're down 15, 13, 11, 10, 8, 5, 4, and 2 points. 15, 13, 11, 10, 8, 5, 4, and 2. Those are the times you go for 2. So obviously it fit into the analytics book, of which Billy Napier is part of and reads, and hence that's the reason he goes for it.
Okay, so that's the analytics reason.
Yes. The justification?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me.
Well, I think that I think what he's saying.
I mean, do you think it has to do? I mean, so it does nothing to do with the time of the game either?
I'm sure it does. I'm sure it has to do with time of the game. Probably less than so much time in the game remaining. Probably 2, 3, 4 minutes. But there's also the part that I semi understand about is like if you need 2 scores, and it depends upon what you need those 2 scores for. Do you need 2 scores to win the game, to tie the game, or to bring yourself within the possibility of winning the game?
Well, I mean, if you kick the extra point, you need a touchdown and a field goal
to tie the game.
To tie the game.
Right. But coaches don't play for ties, okay?
Excuse me?
I say coaches aren't playing for ties.
Sure.
Okay? Right.
But I mean, when you're down, aren't you trying to
not lose the game?
Get to overtime?
Yes.
Because you now missed the extra point because you went for 2, and now you have to go for 2 touchdowns.
His defense was this when asked that question. The reason he did it is because he was on the road. Okay. Very, very difficult. It's a home field advantage that increases to almost 65% for home teams in overtime. So now he's on the road.
Now he doesn't want to go to overtime.
He doesn't want to go to overtime. Exactly right. He wants to skirt that issue. So hence.
Okay. But then watching the game unfold, if he had just kicked the extra point, he could have set up for a field goal
to go to overtime.
Yes.
Okay. Yes, that's true. Had he kicked 2 extra points, he wouldn't have had to do either, right?
Oh, I don't know. It's just, I don't know. It's new age that we're living in.
I don't get it. I mean, Brandon Staley, the head coach of the Chargers, he's the one.
Oh,
he gets me the most. And if I'm amazed that he's still coaching that football team.
Well, he may not be coaching the team very long.
I don't think it's going to be. I mean, they won last year, but he's being exposed this year, and he got exposed by leaving Justin Herbert in that football game. And somebody said to him that Justin Herbert said that he wanted to stay in the game. Well,
is he coaching the game?
That's my question. Yeah. Who's the head coach?
Yeah.
Who's the head coach of this football team?
I don't even. I tell you, Mark, he shouldn't have even been starting.
No.
How many times do we talk? These guys, they're supposed to be these analytics geniuses. Okay. How do we know that? Because we talked about this, and I've asked you, and you said you don't have it, but one day we should try to do this. But there has to be a good stat for first game backup quarterback starting. How does your team do? Because we talk about it every time it happens, and it can't be that much lower than 50%. It can't be, because we talk. There's so many teams that wind up winning, and I know the situations are always different. Obviously, if your team's a 20-point, or really bad, but even in those circumstances, sometimes it's worth it. So I mean, aren't they looking at those analytics that tell you, hey, you know what, play your backup, your team will respond, and that's better than risking injury to your starting quarterback for 1 week.
It's probably because it's relative, relative to the strength of the football team, the win-loss record of the football team. A backup quarterback for the Houston Texans isn't going to have as much effect in a football game as perhaps maybe a backup quarterback for the Buffalo Bills, because he's surrounded with talent and he's lacking the talent on the Houston Texans side of the football. But if everybody was in the NFL, if any given result can happen on any given Sunday, and you do surround that backup quarterback in that first football game, I know we cash a whole lot more tickets than we lose by backing that quarterback.
Especially when you have the better team.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly.
So I was shocked. I actually thought, like, I know obviously the line went from 7-3, as well as should have, but I was like, you know what? I wanted the Chargers to start the backup. I was willing to take the Chargers with the backup at 3. Then what happened? Because and it's not that Herbert didn't play. It's not that he played awful, but again, it's just unless you have absolutely no faith in your backup, because that's what that tells me.
The other part of the equation, Greg, is that football team was destroyed with injuries. They were a mash unit, the Chargers were. He had no business having Herbert start that football game, because the starting complement of players weren't even there,
especially on the offensive line.
Exactly.
That's bad news for the Chargers moving forward. They got to get healthy fast.
Yes, they do.
Jeff Collins got fired, so another coach down the drain. I mean, this should be an example to the next situation when not that any teams have triple options anymore, but if there's a triple option team that the athletic director says, all right, I want to hire you, but we want to change this and get back to, being like everybody else, pro style or spread, whatever. And you're the head coach. I'm saying no, not interested, because unless you give me a 5-year guaranteed,
ironclad guarantee,
all sorts of bonuses and stuff, I'm not interested, because I am not interested in doing all the changing and being around with all the losing for a couple of years, for only 2 years, and then you fire me.
Yeah, that was not a justified firing at all. Jeff Collins is really, really well respected too, by the way. But he walked into a no-win situation. Everybody that he took over with was brought there to run that Paul Johnson offense, and nobody there could do it. And yet they all had to adapt and try to learn to make these changes. Just coincidentally, on our playbooksports.com website, I run a weekly poll question, and our poll question of the week this week was, which of the next college football coaches will be fired? And we had a list of 5 of them to begin the week. Oh. And the day I put it up there, Collins got fired.
Okay.
So we had to change it down to 4. So now there are 4 coaches that are on.
Who were those 4?
Well, the 4 coaches that were on the list, the way that people are voting right now currently, number 1 is Carl Durrell from Colorado.
Good one.
The next to go. Number 2, Brian Harsin, Auburn.
Good one.
And numbers 3 and 4 are tied right now. And they are Steve Sarkisian from Texas.
Good one.
And David Shaw from Stanford.
Okay, they're all good.
Yep.
Arroyo should be on, not Arroyo, Avalos should be on that soon from Boise.
I would think so, especially if nothing gets better from this point forward from Boise.
Yeah, that's embarrassing what's going on there. And it's not a surprise. I mean, sooner or later you keep going down the tree or whatever it is, the coaching tree, and it doesn't work that way. Sooner or later, you have to go outside the family and bring in somebody new, because that fifth guy, that fifth assistant, or that fifth connection that was a player here, that was an assistant for this guy, that was a head coach here, all that kind of nonsense, it's just not going to work. Sooner or later, you're not going to find that diamond in the rough. I wouldn't be surprised now that they brought back Dirk Cutter to run the offense. I wouldn't be surprised if they fire Avalos, they give Cutter the job back again.
That could well happen, especially if the offense sparks and goes back to where it used to be, and it possibly can behind Cutter. That's exactly what he's all about.
I always felt Cutter was college football, fine, keep him there, whatever. I was always the worst. I never thought he should have been an NFL head coach. I thought that was he was never a highly successful head coach anyway in college. But at least when you're at that level, that's a little bit different. I'd give him a little bit more of a chance at Boise.
Well, there's a head coach in the NFL right now that almost runs the same parallel pattern. It's called the Peter principle. When you advance that level of something you can't handle, kudos to you because you kept progressing, but you got to a point where you're at a level right now where you just can't handle it.
Yeah.
And the same way in the National Football League, we're seeing it. It's unfolding before our eyes, and it's the same parallel. And that's Cliff Kingsbury with the Arizona Cardinals. He was never much of a head coach in college football, and I think that was a stunning hire when they made that. But, the reason they made that was because he had coached Patrick Mahomes at Texas Tech in the day, and they wanted that same playbook to be run with this offense with Kyler Murray. So that's exactly the reason he's the head coach.
I think the problem with Arizona is, to be honest, is I don't really, and I think it could have worked. I'm not saying it's probably on its way out, but I think it could have worked. The problem is I just don't, it starts at the top. And I just don't think Arizona is structurally built for success from the owner down. I think they should have already changed the general manager. I think he's been there long enough and had enough chances. And then now it's like the rest of the NFL is kind of doing the same thing Cliff Kingsbury's doing. So, and then you hear all these rumors about the whole reason they put that clause in his contract is because he's not studying hard enough. And then you just kind of see what's going on with the offense, and you're wondering, well, is that true? Is what's going on? And it's not looking good right now for Arizona. And it's funny how quickly it changed, because mid-season last season, things were looking so dynamic. Everybody was falling in love with what was going on with the Cardinals and Kyler Murray, and then it all fell apart once he got hurt.
Yeah, they were questionably the best team in the National Football League last year at that point. But then, like you said, it's like they jumped out of the airplane and forgot the parachute. And it's really been a hard ride since then for them.
All right. Now, let's go ahead and go into our college football games. And we'll start in the SEC, because you got this Kentucky Ole Miss game. And I'll tell you right now, I was very surprised. Not where the line started, but where it's ended up. 4.5. Okay, fine. I don't know why it's at 7, and that's why I took Kentucky. What's that? Is that this has been an ongoing thing on this show for several weeks now. It's a lack of respect for some of the teams that aren't used to being, they don't have the brand name college football. Talked about that with Oregon State, with Kansas, and I think this is the same thing. I mean, look, I don't believe this Levis kid is as good as some of these analysts are touting him as. I think he's an interesting kid. He'll probably go in the first round. He's got talent. But at college, he's the best player on the field. And we know what Stoops can do as a coach. We talked about this last week when I took Tulsa against Ole Miss. And that game went down to the fourth quarter. And that was a 22-point spread. What are they watching? I mean, I'm sorry. Why? Because Kentucky's now blowing out Northern Illinois, or they're having a hard time blowing out Miami of Ohio. That's what Kentucky does. They're not a sexy blowout team.
All they do is win football games. It's all they do, and they don't have to do it pretty either. And I think that'll be the case in the football game just like this as well. Mississippi's in this SEC West, the division that everybody's got their arms wrapped around because it is the best division in all of college football. The teams in that division are 23-5 combined this year. Kind of hard to argue about that. But Kentucky is over in the SEC East, and other than Georgia, they might be the second best team over in the SEC East. And if they are, and you're talking about getting a touchdown in a Southeast Conference game, I've got to grab the points, especially with I think is the better coach in the game in Mark Stoops.
Yeah, it's really right now it's down to Kentucky and Tennessee. So
Yes,
look, really the strength of Ole Miss right now is their running game. I mean, they got these two kids, the transfer from TCU, I believe, and then Judkins, the other kid, because Dart, we talked about him, the USA transfer. He's been okay. He's fine, but they just gave him the job a couple of weeks ago. He had to win the job, earn the job. So anyway, yeah, Kentucky getting 7, definitely like that one. Let's now move on to the Big Ten, and here's a further proof of how I'm not a biased handicapper, because if you're a biased handicapper, you're a losing handicapper. I'm taking Iowa against Michigan, and I actually wouldn't. I actually think it would be a good idea to even throw a couple of bucks on the money line. It's a plus 330 money line. Michigan's an 11-point favorite. It's their first road game, so really, it's kind of a new offensive line. You know, they've got a new tackle that was just starting this year. They have a couple of other new faces in the offensive line, so they got to go on the road for the first time in a hostile environment. J.J. McCarthy, who's an electrifying quarterback. The problem is that for the first time last week, a couple of throws he'd like back. He missed wide open receivers deep, which has really been his forte. He's not usually inconsistent like that. But now he's got to go on the road. He's never started a game on the road before, so he's got to go on the road and start for the first time. And then, of course, you throw in the fact that this is a Big Ten championship game rematch. Michigan kicked their butt last year, embarrassed them, so there's a little bit of revenge. And we also know, historically, Iowa has done a good job against Michigan in this spot at home.
Yes, they have. This is the spot that Iowa thrives in football games like this. You go and look at Michigan. The last 6 times they've been on the road at Iowa, they've not covered the spread in any of those football games. Now, they're taking onto the road for the first time this season, which is really, really not all that pleasurable for a football team like this. And you mentioned the butt kicking they got last year in the Big Ten championship game. I'm sure that will wear on the Iowa football players coming into this football game. The thing that I love the most, though, was our incredible stat of the week in the Playbook football newsletter this week, and it pertains to Iowa, and it's Kirk Ferentz, their head coach. And if you go back on his last 57 football games, he's lost only 2 of them by double digits.
Oh.
That's a pretty strong stat, to say the
regular
least.
Season or all time, and that includes the Big Ten championship game last year.
No, we're gonna put him. Let me bring it up here because I want to read this to you exactly the way it is. Okay, this is only 2 of his last 57 home games. Okay, home games has he lost by double digits. That makes him 55-2 to this number.
That's awesome. Okay,
I'll take 55-2. Yes.
And then again, we're giving you reasons why based on some of the players that are going to be going on the road for the first time in big spots for Michigan. Look, we know Michigan has more explosive players, and we also know that Michigan could be up by 6 with 2 minutes to go. They can hand the ball off to Clem, and he could go 80 yards, and you could lose the cover. That's how explosive Michigan can be. They also should get Donovan Edwards back, and they missed him last week. Donovan Edwards, in my mind, just remember that name, because he's going to be a pro at the next level. But Corum just shows you how good he is. He's a fantastic little running back. Him and Deuce Vaughn. Corum's, I think, a little bit better, but they're both, the size obviously would be a little bit of an issue at the next level, but they're fantastic college running backs, and Corum showed it.
Oh, they'll make it at the next level, Greg. Yeah. And the speed for what Corum has, for sure they will.
Yeah. And the other thing is Michigan's defense. We don't know really what they're made of. Now, Iowa can't move the ball. Even last week against Rutgers, they had 2 defensive touchdowns. They just can't. Their offense is terrible. It's got to be one of the worst offenses. Not just one of. It has to be the worst Power 5 offense in college football right now. And
Yeah,
and
the
I
first
don't
two
even know.
football
That means
games,
that they probably can't allow more than 17 points.
probably. And I would safe to say if they give up 20, I'd say we still got a good chance to cash this ticket.
Yeah, because winning the game different than getting 11. Exactly.
Exactly
So,
right.
but like I said, I even throw a few bucks on the money line as well. 2016 Iowa at home, a 24-point dog beat Michigan.
There we go.
I think that was Jim Harbaugh's first year, by the way. Okay, but we'll see, because if J.J. McCarthy takes off this week, then it is what it is. But he has to prove himself. I think he will at some point, but he's got to get. This is a good test for him. Okay, ACC. We got some good ACC games to talk about, and here's the big one that we've been referencing since our ACC preview show: NC State and Clemson. And I had the opportunity to go either take the 7, put it up with my point system around the 4-star, or go all in and put my money where my mouth is, which is why I put NC State with one of my upsets as a 2-1 dog, because I picked NC State to win the conference. I don't believe they're going to be able to win the conference if they lose this game. I think there's a little bit better chance they can now, though. If there's like a 3 or 4-way tie, I have no idea what it might be. Whoever the highest ranking team is, I have no idea. But the reason is because we know Wake Forest is still good, and we also know that Florida State now is a legitimate contender, and Florida State will be playing both of these teams real soon. So it could be by the end of the season, NC State, Florida State, and Clemson all have one loss, and who knows what the tiebreaker is. But just getting away from that, I still believe in NC State, and that's the reason I went ahead and picked them here.
I can completely understand believing in NC State. They're a very good football team, very well coached. A lot was expected for them at the beginning of the football season, but it all also leads to me to believe that Dabo Swinney, because of all this, will have his team really focused on this football program. Number one, revenge from getting knocked off last year. Dabo Swinney is amongst the best coaches in college football in exacting revenge. In conference games, 14-6 straight up, 13-7 to the number. And when he's a single-digit favorite in those games, 6-0 straight up and against the spread. That's the key in the contest to me, Greg, is the fact that he's laying a touchdown in this football game. Not 14, not 17, not 20, a touchdown. And for that reason, and the revenge, I'm going to Dabo Swinney and the Clemson Tigers.
Well, look, Clemson has won 36 straight home games. So that would have to be knocked off if NC State's going to pull off the win. And with Clemson, last week, the quarterback definitely played his best game of the season. But, if you zero in on the quarterback, and again, same thing I was talking about with the running backs, we're at the next level. It's not happening. He's not an NFL quarterback. But he finally started making plays to be an exciting college quarterback, which he hasn't done since he replaced Lawrence a couple of years ago for a couple of games. That's a positive sign, but he needs to keep going. And I just wonder, it was such an emotional win last week as well. They had everything going on with their player and his sister dying and an overtime game. And there was so much emotion going into that game. And they got to come right back, and they're asked for more emotion because of the revenge factor, like you said. So NC State, meanwhile, hasn't really had to worry about any of that stuff. They've kind of won their games, and now now we're ready. We're ready for you. But we'll find out. This is NC State's opportunity with Dave Doran, as I said this at the beginning of the season, to prove whether or not they can step up and be a national championship type of ACC contender the way Clemson's done. Not on a yearly basis, but hey, can you do it just this one year? You've got the quarterback. This is a lot of players came back from your team last year. This is their chance to make it work.
I'm going to say one thing in closing about this football game in DJU, their quarterback, because neither of us can pronounce his name, but we'll use his initials, okay? If Clemson makes it to the college football playoff this year, he will be quarterbacking in the National Football League. He was a 5-star recruit, none rated higher than he coming out of high school, okay? He made it to Clemson, sat behind Trevor Lawrence, got his chance, looked pretty good, and then all of a sudden, I think the weight of the world fell on the kid's shoulders, realizing, the position that he was in. He got to step back and watch this football season unfold last year a lot without him. And I think what he's doing right now is rebuilding his name, his reputation, because he's got the size, he's got the stature, he's got the arm. The question is, can he read defenses? Can he read progressions? If he can do those types of things, we're going to see him in the National
Well,
Football
that
League.
was your point, is if they get to the playoffs, because that means
Yes,
he's going to play good football, because they're going to need him
exactly
to,
right.
because I don't think that they're going to be able to beat NC State and Florida State. And I just don't think they could do that. Those two teams, because that means you've beaten Wake Forest, NC State, and Florida State. I don't think you could win those games unless he plays well enough to be considered a top, a prospect of some sort. So
Here's how I see the season playing out for Clemson, Greg. Coming into the year, Dabo Swinney was on record as saying this is the best defense he will have ever coached at Clemson. Well, the defense is not playing all that
no,
well. They're good. They're good, but they're not. They're just mediocre good. Okay, it's the offense that stepped up
yeah,
this year.
or at least even
Just,
last week, yeah.
just the reverse. So what happens when this purported awesome defense suddenly starts delivering the goods? Then they're going to become a Clemson football team
Absolutely.
that will make the
Oh,
playoff. Right.
absolutely. If the offense
Right.
can play at the level,
Maintain.
yeah. I mean, that was the
Yeah.
problem. Especially they got
Right.
the running back Shipley, but Wake Forest's defense, we know where it is. It's that's why Pittsburgh was able to beat Clemson and Wake Forest wasn't, because Pittsburgh had Pickett, Hartman, the quarterback situation pretty even, but Pitt had a defense, a decent enough
Yes.
defense. Wake Forest did not. All right, now moving on to the other ACC game that I wanted to reference was Wake Forest and Florida State. And Wake came through for me last week as a 7-point dog, and I'm going right back to Wake as a 7-point dog here. I'm a little bit surprised, just like the Kentucky line. This one started out 3.5. I thought, yeah, that's where I thought it should be. But it ballooned up to 7. I'm not really sure why. I know Wake hasn't had a good run on the road as a dog lately, just 2-8 last 10. I know FSU has covered all 3 games this year, and they're very impressive, and we've talked them up. We know how good this Florida State team has been so far. And by the way, Florida State's next 2 opponents are at NC State, and then they host Clemson. How about that 3-game stretch for Florida
Wow.
State on the schedule? It's homecoming, by the way, for Florida State. And yeah, Wake Forest, probably going to be kind of tough coming off that loss last week. But Wake is a desperate team, too. Wake knows they lose this game against Florida State, their season's over. It's done. They're not going to be able to win the ACC. And, after what they did last season, the goals are going to feel kind of disappointing. So I expect them to be up for this game big time, even though emotionally it killed them last week. And I'm taking the 7 points.
I'm taking the 7 points with you here as well. I think Florida State is going to have to prove that they're for real. They've gotten off to this nice start. We give them their kudos for everything that they've done. But now they're going to have to deliver the goods against the top quality football teams. Dave Clawson is an excellent head coach. In fact, as a road dog of 6 or more points in his career, he's 14-7 to the spread. So he doesn't really get rubbed out or embarrassed in situations just like this. I feel the pressure is squarely on Florida State in this football game. And what we've got here is a combination of 2 factors that I love when I'm looking at football games and handicapping them. When I'm looking at 2 winning teams playing one another, and the dog is off a loss and the winner is off a win. You're going to always try to make the case for the dog because he's a winning team. He's off that loss and he's going to come real hard. It's exactly what we've got here with a well-coached football team.
By the way, Wake Forest has beaten and covered against Florida State the last 2 years, but they're going to get 7 in this one. So, and even though the weather is now gone from the area by the time they played the game in Tallahassee, I should mention the weather is going to be coming towards Clemson and Death Valley. So that is something to keep an eye on. There's a potential for wind and rain. So the Clemson North Carolina State game, weather could be a big part of the game. So make sure before you wager on the game, make sure you know what you're getting yourself into. So that's important. Okay, now let's move on to the Big 12. And I don't know what else to say about what's going on with Kansas. But our boy Lance Leipold has done a phenomenal job. Everybody's talking about whether or not Nebraska is going to steal him away. He's got Nebraska ties. It's interesting that Matt Campbell, the Iowa State coach in this game, has also been rumored to Nebraska. So maybe one of these 2 coaches would be coaching at Nebraska. The AD for Kansas seems to understand what's going on. He says he understands. So I think what that means is, but it's still a little bit early. We'll see. And this is what we're talking about, because Kansas still has to prove themselves, because the lines now in these spots, it's one thing to be favored over Duke at home. It's another thing when you're now playing Big 12 against a quality program like Iowa State, that they're not favored in this game, because there still needs to be proof. We need the evidence. Is this still just a little bit of a thing going on, non-conference thing, even though they won at West Virginia? And I know how you feel. You feel how I feel. I could not believe they were the dog in this game. I'm sorry, but I mean, I'm watching games. I'm watching both of these teams. Iowa State is not better than Kansas right now. This is about history. That's all it's about. And now I'm actually not delighted. Two reasons why they're getting the points. One, because obviously I'm getting points. Just didn't have to give points. But two, they're not the favorite, so there's no kind of pressure as far as, oh, we're the favorite. We're not used to being in this role. Now everybody expects us to win. I love this game. Absolutely. I'm so scared of this game because I love it so much.
Well, a couple of words of caution I'm going to throw out here, okay? Number one, I don't handicap the odds that the odds maker puts out. He does a great job with lines. He's a handicapper par excellence, okay? That's exactly what they do. They're handicappers who make outstanding lines. I don't question. What I do is I just handicap the game and the line that they did put the game out at. Now, that being the case, and Kansas being the dog here, you have to ask yourself, what are some of the reasons that Kansas is the dog here? One of them could well be the fact that Iowa State's defense is far superior, 130 yards a game better superior. The other case that you can make here is the fact that Iowa State has dominated this Kansas team. They beat them 11 of the last 12 football games. And it goes back to what you opened up with in the conversation about the game. This becomes what you call a step-up game for Kansas. They've made this mark. They've made their mark. They've proven that they're the new kids in the block, and everybody should respect them. But now they're stepping up, and now they've got to show it, and against a good quality football team with a really, really good head coach here. That's the reason Iowa State's favored in this football game. Now, if all that goes out the window, if Kansas wins this game, they will then have checked a lot of boxes, okay? They've shown that they can rise in a step-up game. They've shown that they're not the Kansas of old in the past. I'm going to lean to Iowa State until Kansas proves it to me in a step-up game, and that's what this is, a step-up game.
All right, and then in the by the way, before we move on, Leipold, 24-9 against the spread at home as an FBS head coach.
Really strong. Yes.
I found that information right in here, by the way.
Nice.
Yeah, you should pick one up.
I should have checked that, yes.
All right, now the Pac-12, and here we go again, no respect. Oregon State, what a game against USC. Did you watch the end of that game?
No, I did not, unfortunately.
So Oregon State's got the lead. USC is like 2 minutes left. They got the ball at midfield, 4th and 6. Quarterback, who had been doing nothing all game. So he steps up in the pocket. You could tell he's about to get sacked, and then you're thinking, oh, he's going to run for the first down. But he gets stopped 2 yards short of the first down. But it was only one guy for Oregon State that made the tackle, that tried to make the tackle. So he was able to make the initial stick. Then the pile came. And when the pile came, USC's guys pushed the quarterback over the first down marker and picked up the first down. And USC, a few plays later, found Addison for the touchdown, and that was the ball game in a defensive game. That's how close Oregon State came from winning it. But the problem was Chance Nolan had like one of his worst games. He had 4 interceptions in the game. So they came this close to winning the game, and he still had 4 interceptions. Now, the Utah game. And if you look at it here, Utah is always a good team to take at home. 14-5, last 19 against the spread at home. But keep this in mind. Oregon State covered at Utah the last time they played at Utah. So even though they're good as a home favorite, didn't work against Oregon State in 2020. Matter of fact, the last 2 years that these two teams have played, the 2020 contest was a 6-point outcome. Utah won the game as a 14-point favorite. They went to Oregon State last year, and Oregon State upset Utah at home. So these players at Oregon State, they have the confidence that they know they can hang with Utah. And that's why I am definitely taking Oregon State in this one. I'm grabbing the 10 points as one of my top picks this week. I think it's going to be another really good football game in the Pac-12.
I have to wonder whether or not Oregon State can play up to the same level that they did against Southern Cal last week. That's going to be the key question here, because what they're doing is, in essence, they're going up against the two best teams inside the Pac-12 this year, back-to-back weeks, and losing a real tough game, as you said. If that play had to happen for Southern Cal, and there was a rule in effect, then Southern Cal would have been guilty of aiding and abetting.
And I'm okay with that rule. That non-rule. I like it. I think you should just sort of like rugby. I think, unless the player is stopped for like more than a second, I think it should be, hey man, just whoever wants it more, who's ever more physical, go for it.
I agree 100%. I'm just crying Oregon State's case here.
And I was crying too when I was watching it. So yeah.
But I'm going to lean to Utah in the game for the big revenge factor, the fact that they're not going to catch Utah napping in this football game, the fact that they beat them last year, and they're awesome in revenge. Utah is a real strong field here, and I question whether or not Oregon State can get up and play at the same level this week than they did last week at Southern Cal.
Yeah, if you look at it, there's one good trend for Oregon State, one bad one. Oregon State's dropped 6 straight spreads away when they take on an opponent in a revenge situation. But Oregon State 11-2 against the spread. They're less 13 as a road dog. Again, I think that cancels out with Utah as a really good home favorite. Okay, and then the final game I wanted to touch up on is Cincinnati and Tulsa. And this is the big game out of the group of 5 this week. Mentioned Tulsa last week, and he almost came through. Talked about that before against Ole Miss. And I'm going right back to Tulsa this week as a 10-point dog against Cincinnati. They're also getting close to 3-1 on the money line. And so the trends we said last week still kind of hold true here. They're 14-2 against the spread the last 3 years, including this season, as a dog. And then they just covered last week. They are also 9-1 against the spread the last 2 years when they're in a revenge situation. Keep in mind, these two teams have played the last 3 years, including the ACC title game in 2020. Cincinnati won all 3. Tulsa covered all 3, including last year. Tulsa, we know how good Cincinnati was last year. They were a 22-point favorite, and they only beat Tulsa by 8. So Tulsa seems to play very well against Cincinnati. Keep in mind, Cincinnati's won 16 straight conference games, 10-5-1 ATS in those games. The big deal in this one, the reason why I went with the points over the actual upset was because of the fact that we're not 100% sure yet whether or not Davis Brin is going to start for Tulsa. So he got hurt early in the game against about midway through the game against Ole Miss. The backup, Braylon Braxton, came in. He's more of a dual threat guy as opposed to Brin, who's a pocket passer. But they still hung with Ole Miss, even with Braxton. So that's why I'm confident enough to take the 10.
I think I would put them on your money list, Greg, the Tulsa Hurricane, in this football game as well, for a couple of reasons. Number one, there's no refuting the fact that Cincinnati is indeed the best team in this conference, but Tulsa has hung tooth and nail with this team in each of the last 3 years, while Cincinnati has been the prominent team or the dominant team inside the conference. They took double digits each of the last 3 years. They covered the spread in all 3 of those football games by an average losing margin of 7 points per game. And that's the key to me, is triple revenge. And I say triple revenge. When I say triple, I mean triple exact. And that's exactly what they've got here. Every senior on this Tulsa football team knows that since they've been here, Cincinnati's taken them out and has taken them close call football type
And it's their
game.
last chance.
And it's their last chance. That's exactly what it is. That's why triple revenge exact works real well for seniors in football games. I'm going to play them plus the points in a contest like this here. Every good team always seems to either stub their toe or get a scare along the way, and this is going to be Cincinnati's scarecrow game. I think Tulsa's waiting in the weeds for this football team, and they have the ability to pull the upset.
Yeah, I mean, I would have went with the upset outright if I'd known Brin was going to be healthy.
Right.
So game time, somebody says Brin's starting. I'm definitely going to throw a little bit more money. I'm still putting money
Add
on
them on
it,
your list.
but
Right.
I'll put a little bit more if I know Brin's playing, because I don't think the line is going to change much if Brin's announced the quarterback.
I don't think it will because he's not a all conference quarterback, right?
Okay, now as far as my double-digit upsets this week, I have 4 games on the docket. I've got 2 that are just barely double digits. That's West Virginia over Texas, Rice over Alabama, Birmingham, both a little bit under 3-1. Then I've got Arkansas over Alabama. They're about a 6-1. And then I've got, the last week's UTEP kind of upset, UConn over Fresno State. And just so you know the reasoning behind that one, besides the fact that, of course, anything can happen, it's college football, is that not only will Fresno State be without their starting quarterback in the game, who got hurt, of course, in the USC game, but they're also going to be without their top defender. He's a defensive back, so he's out. And then they're also going to be without a couple other key players on their team. So they got several key players, including the quarterback, that's out. This is going to be the longest road trip in school history. You got to travel over 3,000 miles for this game. And last year, UConn was a 31-point dog at home against Wyoming. They lost the game by 2. They had a 2-point conversion attempt. They failed. And they went to Vandy the next week as a 14-point dog and lost the game by, I think it was also by a couple points. So I'm just going to roll the dice there on one of those freaky 13-1 games. Jim Mora, maybe he gets his first really big win with all those injuries and the long road trip. Anyway, that's the reason I went with the crazy game, just so anybody understands why I'm doing that nonsense. But which one of those 4 games do you like the best?
Well, I like the reasoning, especially the scheduling dynamics in the Utah game. You mentioned Wyoming going to UConn last year and getting the bejeebers scared out of them, and this could well be the same case here.
Mountain West team, too.
A Mountain West team. And in fact, we called it out in our newsletter this week.
Oh, you did?
Excuse me, yes. The fact that this is the only time Fresno State has gone east in my database, okay? They don't go the other side of the Mississippi all too many times. There may have been one other MAC game.
Actually, they actually played Rutgers.
Rutgers.
I remember that as a Rutgers guy. It was a while ago.
Right.
Like I think it might have been the last time Shiano was there. That's how long it's been.
And I'm going to venture to say they probably got destroyed, Fresno State, in a game like that, just because of the
possibly, sure.
Yeah, with the dynamics of all that. But of your list here, I certainly am not going to step in front of Alabama. And I understand the attractiveness of Arkansas, and Alabama's going to get scared at some point in some game.
Let me ask you, are you surprised about the line?
The line or the money line?
No, just the line. Especially considering that they almost lost to Texas.
Well, that was the scare, okay? Now, is there going to be a second scare for this football team?
Because it depends on how good do we think Alabama is at this point. I don't know. We don't know yet. I mean, they only played one good team.
I kind of think they are this good. I think they're the kind of a team, Greg, I see steamrolling as the season keeps progressing. They're going to keep winning big and bigger and bigger and bigger every week. Like Ohio State's beginning to do just that same thing right now. That's sort of what I have in store for Alabama this year, because this is a mission season for Nick Saban. But out of your list here, I would bite for West Virginia over Texas. I'm not a big Steve Sarkisian fan at all. I think he finds ways to lose games rather than win games. Neil Brown could be one of those coaches we talked about that could well be on the hot seat here at West Virginia. He's got to start stepping up and doing a better job for the football program. They're playing some okay football, but not for the money that they paid him for. I think West Virginia's got the chance to pull the rug out on Texas.
Yeah, if you look at it with West Virginia in their games, now let's remember that they lost the game, the first game of the season that won to Pittsburgh. And that was a game they really should have won. They blew that game. Then the very next week they played Kansas, our Kansas team. And that game goes to overtime and they lose. And then they blow out an FCS team. They come back and they blow out Virginia Tech on the road. So they have out-yardaged all 4 of their opponents this year.
That's the key stat.
And remember, they've got the kid the quarterback JT Daniels, that we have been waiting for. this is his chance. Stay healthy, lead your team. And so far, he's doing that. And they also have a freshman running back that's off to a really good start. And the receivers are they have good receivers. So yeah, I think this could be the game that Brown needs to kind of say, hey, you know what? We're back. We've got something going here finally that I've been trying to build.
You hit it right on the head. I'm going to hold this up right here. This is called our midweek alert football newsletter.
Okay.
And what it is, it's our statistical newsletter, and I live by it once the season begins. And the reason I live by it is if you open this newsletter up and you look on page 2 of the newsletter, it's our stat rankings page. In our stat rankings page, we list every football team and how they're doing in the stats this year, and how many yards they're winning or losing the games by. West Virginia is one of these football teams that's under the radar, and as you mentioned, won the stats in every game they played. That is really what you call a sleeper live dog. And as you say again, they're quarterbacked by JT Daniels, the kid who I think we'll see playing in the National Football League, despite the fact he's bounced around a lot. He still is a 5-star recruit,
Yeah.
and he has a lot of talent
He's
here.
got his chance. Yep.
Yes, he does. So I think that makes them the viable choice for your straight-up winner on your double-digit upset list.
And they're 270 right now on the money line. And Ewers may play this week because he's splitting practice time now. I think he probably plays because they can't afford to lose. I mean, because they got Oklahoma next. And they've already lost twice. So, so I could think Ewers can come back and play. By the way, Worthy's also banged up, the wide receiver. He's their top wide receiver, so that would be a big loss if he doesn't play in the game. The other game I mentioned, is Rice against UAB. And I had Rice last week in the points against Houston, but I'm jumping on the money line. And I know, UAB lost to them last year. They're going to get revenge. All right, whatever. But Rice, I said this for the last couple of years. I like what Bloomgren's doing there, but he's got to get a quarterback, somebody that can throw the football. Doesn't have to be a superstar, just somebody that's not terrible. And now he's got a guy, TJ McMahon. He's not awesome, but he's 10 times better than what they've had. So they've got the right quarterback. They got 2 really good receivers, including the former quarterback, Luke McCaffrey, one of the McCaffrey kids. And if you look at it, this is not a phony Rice team either. Speaking of stats, if you look at it, when they upset Louisiana 2 weeks ago, they did it by a 449 to 175 yardage margin. And they followed that up, losing to Houston last week by 7 points. They lost a yardage by 3 yards against Houston. And that game, by the way, they lost on a defensive touchdown in the last couple of minutes of the game. Otherwise, that could have went to overtime, and who knows. So the fact that they couldn't close the job last week leads me in a position where maybe I could take advantage of it this week with basically a 3-1 money line.
I agree. I mean, I'm sort of behind you on all 4 of your plays. I think if you have a good chance of even winning 2 of them. If you win 1, you're in the chips. If you win 2, you have a nice profitable Saturday.
Yes.
And I think you have a chance to have a nice profitable Saturday.
And that's the game plan. I always try to remind everybody. This is about numbers. This is about making money. Some weeks I could have a really good, hey, I had a really good line where I made more. I won a whole lot more games than I lost games, but I ended up even money. And then I have some where I was like 2 games under 500 and I made money. So that's why it's about making money. I don't care. I don't have an ego. I don't care about how many wins I have or lost. I just want to make sure I'm making money. And that's the way I try to make money on the double digits. If I, like you said, I have 4 of them there. If I get 1, I break even. If I get 2, I'm over the top. So, but it's not easy because if it was, everybody would be doing it. All right, so we're going to now go to a quick break. I am going to fill you in with everything else going on in college football. So many more games to talk about in a very short period of time. So I've condensed these reports as best I can, and that's going to include injury updates, more trends, and, of course, picks. So let's go ahead and do that right now, and we'll be right back to talk NFL. All right, we're going to run through as many college football games, picks, injury updates, trends, and more as we can. And we're going to be a lot shorter than we were last week. Don't forget, at the bottom of the screen, you do not wish to continue with my report You can just find out where we pick up again with Mark and I as far as our NFL coverage. You can do the same thing with our fantasy football report that's coming up a little bit later on. Let's get right to it. Here you can take a look at what our college football, I guess you can call them standings. This is our picks. This is how much we've made so far after the first month or so of the season. What we're going to do quickly, though, is zero in on several games. Most of these are not part of our top picks. Matter of fact, our top picks are going to be right there. As you can see, as they're going to go by. That's going to include our top overall plays, double-digit upsets, regular upsets, and additional picks so you can see what they are. Okay, now let's go ahead and check out our first game that I would have zero in on, Temple and Memphis. And you're going, what the hell are you doing with Temple and Memphis? Well, you can see right there. The trend, Temple has actually owned this series. And I know Temple is a lot better in years past than they were over the last couple of years. But you see that? Actually, you don't see that because I left it off the screen. And that is the fact that last year they upset Memphis at home. And, you know, Temple wasn't a very good home team. But overall, they have covered all 7 of the games against Memphis. More importantly, Memphis is not a very good home favorite. And I like the way Temple is starting to play a little bit better now over the last few weeks. So they've got their confidence going. I think this is a pretty good spot where Temple might be able to cover the 20 and no more. Let's go ahead and move on to the next game. And this is going to be the game between Air Force and Navy. Navy coming off a big win against East Carolina last week. But if you really looked at the game, you can see that that was a game where East Carolina, they did not have their all-star running back. He got injured early in the game, didn't play. The backup running back fumbled late in the game. That was the game-winning score for Navy. This was just a game that if you would look at it, you could see why East Carolina lost the game. They just threw the game away. Good for Navy. They had an extra week to prepare. They got the win, but they got to step up in competition again and play an Air Force squad that's owned them, as you can see, over the last couple of years, and that's the reason why we like Air Force. They're also 8-1 against the spread their last 9 versus losing teams. Let's now move on to the next one. And speaking of East Carolina, there is East Carolina in the matchup against South Florida this week. And look at that trend for Jeff Scott, the head coach of the Bulls. 8-0 against the spread in his career when he is coming off a straight-up ATS loss. Throw in the fact that East Carolina, look at that trend. That is a big trend as well. 215 last 17 is a road favorite of more than 6. And I also like the fact that there's a little schedule change. Keep this in mind. This is going to be down in Boca now because of the storm. And anytime that happens, I kind of tend to go with the home team. You know, the road team is kind of wondering where they're going to go. They're going to go here. They're going to go there. They got to make the road trip as it is. Again, Mitchell was injured last week. His status unknown for this week. If you find out Mitchell doesn't play, that is an even bigger deal. But I'm going to go ahead really and take that trend. That's the reason why I want to point it. That's the reason I wanted to point this game out more than anything, because that is a good one. And then finally, the other major trend I wanted to throw up here on the board is Arkansas State. This is actually a 3-star pick. Take a look at Arkansas State against Louisiana Monroe. 12-0, straight up and against the spread the last 12 against the Warhawks, coming off a big upset win against their arch rival, Louisiana Lafayette. Arkansas State has covered all 3 straight games this year as well. Butch Jones is trying to get the program going in the right direction. This is the perfect opportunity for him to pick up a win. And they're at home. They've actually played better than the record indicates. And I think this is a good spot for them to get it done and cover the 7 points. All right, now what we're going to do is move on to the rest of the games that I just want to throw in there and the trends. Just sticking in the AAC. Remember, SMU South Florida, Central Florida. That game's on Sunday. Okay, so they have moved the game. It's the only game that was moved as far as Saturday to Sunday as of now. So that's going to be Central Florida hosting SMU on Sunday. They're a 3-point favorite in that one. I don't think we have anything else from those conferences that we were talking about as far as trends or anything like that. So let's move on. Just want to breeze through some of the bigger games. LSU at Auburn. And if you look at it, Auburn has won the last 2 years straight up and against the spread against LSU. LSU's a 9-point favorite. First true road game for LSU. We're going to talk about some of their upsets and excuse me, some of their injuries in just a little bit. But Auburn 0-3 against the spread this year. They got to play Georgia next week, so that's a game that I kind of stayed away from, though. Don't forget, we almost had Missouri last week as one of our upsets. It just didn't work out for us. Okay, now let's go ahead and take a look at the key injuries this week, because this is important. Alabama's got a couple of injuries to keep an eye on. Byron Young and Jordan Battle, two key starters, game time decisions. So check that out. Bowling Green is taking on Akron. And you know what I feel about Bowling Green, but this is a matchup I'm staying away from. Couple of reasons. First time Bowling Green's a road favorite since 2017. Akron has won and covered the last 2 years against Bowling Green, and it's the only 2 FBS wins for Akron since 2019. So this is the only team that they can win and cover against, Bowling Green, as crazy as that sounds. But the important thing is that Bowling Green is about a 9-point favorite, yet as of right now, we do not know if Matt McDonald is going to play. I think he's going to play. Otherwise, I don't know why the spread would be 9. So I think insiders have an idea that McDonald's going to play. Otherwise, Camden North plays, who's an FCS transfer, played against Mississippi State last week. I still think they're a better team even with Orth, but I'm not willing to give up that many points in this kind of a situation, as I just said with Akron. Boise State, San Diego State. We like that game. We like San Diego State in the game against Boise State. You know what's going on with Boise State. They fired the offensive coordinator, and then the quarterback, Bachmeier, decides to transfer. So he's out. That means that they're going to play with a new offensive coordinator. They're going to play with a younger quarterback who's actually a redshirt freshman. Taylor Green's going to get the start. Meanwhile, San Diego State has covered. And by the way, if you're thinking of taking the points or the money line, just go with the money line with San Diego State, because they have had 7 straight wins when their games have been decided by 8 points or less. So if you think you're going to take San Diego State, you just go ahead and take them to win, because when the game is 8 points or less, they win. All right. So that's what that tells me. Why should I bother with the points if whenever that game is 8 points or less and they win, and they're in that game, they win. So screw it. Who needs the points? It's 2-1 on the money line. That's the reason I did that one. By the way, the Aztecs have covered 7 straight away off a non-conference game. BYU, by the way, I like them tonight against Utah State. They're going to get Gunnar Romney back for the first time this year, one of their top 2 wide receivers. The other one, the kid Puka, I think it's Nakua, came back last week, but then re-injured himself. Not sure if he is going to play. Keep an eye on the fact that Xavier Thomas from Clemson may not be back this week, and that is, of course, big. We talked about that on the show a little while ago. He might be out, I think, another 2 or 3 weeks. Also, Hawaii, without their top wide receiver, he broke his collarbone, did not play last week. They're a pretty bad team without him. James Madison, their number 1 running back, did not play against Appalachian State. We don't know if he's going to play this week. He was a lot of accolades for this guy. 6th-year senior. Last year, he was the CAA preseason offensive player of the year. Limited to 4 games last year because of a hamstring injury, had an ankle injury. But he's out again, and didn't matter last week. Shouldn't matter this week against Texas State, but I just figured to let you know that. Chris Rodriguez for Kentucky had the suspension. He is coming back, will return this week against Ole Miss. And of course, as you know, we like Kentucky in that one. Liberty, their quarterback, who we've talked about, we really like Caden Salter. He's ignited this team this year, but he's injured. And we have no idea if he's going to play this week in the game for Liberty. Bennett came in relief for Liberty last week. He was okay, but nothing special. To me, that is a big deal for Liberty. So if you're thinking of taking that game and you're thinking of taking Liberty, I think you have got to have Salter on your side. They're a 3.5-point favorite at Old Dominion. Old Dominion 4-1 against the spread as a home dog under Ricky Ronnie. So to me, if it's either or. If Salter plays, I would probably stay away, but I would still lean towards Liberty. If he doesn't play, I would take Old Dominion. LSU, Butte, their star wide receiver, who's been a little slower under the radar this year. I shouldn't say under the weather, but he's kind of under the stats this year, if that's what you want to say. But he's just having a child. So it's possible that's the reason. Maybe he's been a little bit, interested in what's going on with his life, let alone the football field. But he's going to be away from the game. Quarterback should play. He was banged up last week. Safety Major Burns is going to miss about 3 to 6 weeks, but they get the kid, the Arkansas transfer, Fauci back first time this year from the suspension, the academic suspension. So that's good there. Maryland, the quarterback, the receiver, they're a game time decision, but chances are they're both going to play. Also, take a look at Northern Illinois. Lombardi, the quarterback, did not play last week. We don't know if he's going to play this week at Ball State, so that's still up in the air. I was talking about the Old Dominion game. Blake Watson, who is their best offensive weapon, the running back, did not play last week. We still don't know if he's going to play this week, so keep an eye on that. Pittsburgh is dealing with a bunch of injuries. Jared Wayne, who did not play last week, he injured himself against Western Michigan. They've got the running back who's also injured, defensive lineman. So they got a bunch of injuries, Pitt. So just keep an eye on that. They're playing Georgia Tech. Purdue, Aiden O'Connell. This is a huge deal. He did not play last week. Austin Burton got the start. They barely beat FAU. I don't think it really is O'Connell's fault, even though if O'Connell played, he'd probably score like 40 or 50. And maybe, it was. But bottom line is, we don't know if O'Connell's going to play against Minnesota, so keep an eye on that. Still don't know if Rutgers is going to go with Vedral or Wimsatt. Doesn't matter this week. It's going to matter next week against Nebraska on a Friday. Stanford, E.J. Smith, Emmett's son, officially out for the season. Cedric Tillman did not play last week, the star receiver for Tennessee. They don't play this week. They're hopeful he'll return next week against LSU. We'll keep you updated on that. Texas, we're going against Texas this week with West Virginia. Ewers, I think, is going to play because he's splitting practice reps this week. And Worthy's questionable this week. Injured his leg last week. He's the star wide receiver for the Longhorns, so keep an eye on that. Texas A&M lost their star receiver, the kid Smith, Anis Smith. Actually, it's not how you pronounce his name, but bottom line is he is out for the season for Texas A&M. That is a big blow. They're taking on Mississippi State. Also, Utah, they lost a big-time tight end, one of the best tight ends in college football, to a leg injury. He actually led Utah in receptions with 19. He is out for the rest of the year, so that is a huge blow for Utah. So that pretty much runs through. Just going to quickly make sure that I didn't forget anything. And we are going to do our best here, as I said last week, just going to keep updating everything here on our scoreboard. Try to give you as much information as possible in as short a period of time as we can. I know your time is precious, and ours as well. So we're going to try to do our best to limit as much as we can, again, in this short, condensed period. Coming up, again, don't forget, it's important because we talk about the injury situation in the NFL and a few other things that are important, even if you're not a fantasy football fan. The report we do, Talking Fantasy Football with Jared Small a little bit later on, that is something that you want to take a look at because we talk, like I said, about injuries and how that's going to affect some of the games this week in the NFL. That'll wrap it up. So a lot quicker than what we did last week. And these are just going to get better, like I said, as we move on. Bottom line is we're just trying to get as much content in these shows as possible. The more content, the better for you guys to determine exactly what you want to do with your games in the NFL and college football. So thanks for checking in with us, and we'll see you again next week on our college football report. And we're going to get back to myself and Marc Lawrence. All right, we're back talking NFL. And as we said in the beginning of the show, stay tuned in a few minutes. We're going to have our fantasy football segment. You might say, yeah, I'm not a fantasy football guy. Why do I care? Well, because we made sure that segment every week, we are going to be talking. Every other week, we have two particular analysts. Jared, who is on this week, we're going to cover specifically more things like definitely injury updates, because that's real important. Everybody wants to know, especially in the NFL compared to college, who's starting and how is it going to affect the game itself, not just for fantasy reasons, but also the game itself. So a lot of injury updates, and also talking about obviously how teams are playing overall and how that could help you in fantasy and just overall as far as the team is concerned in the NFL. But then when Matt comes on next week, I don't know if you've ever heard of this, Matt, Mark, and I haven't. I mean, I've heard of it, but I haven't played it. So there's this thing in fantasy where they have the props, just like the NFL. And so what they do is they say, okay, well, you have these fantasy props, and it's really, even though it's fantasy props, it's really, I don't even know why it's fantasy, because it's really just regular props where they say, okay, you have to decide, okay, does Joe Burrow pass for over 300 yards today against Miami? Yes or no, above or under? And then you have to like pick like maybe 3 or 4 games or 3 or 4 props and get them all. So even though it's fantasy covered because these are all fantasy players, it's, to me, it's just NFL wagering, and that's why I think it's a good additional part of what we're doing on this show.
You mentioned about fantasy props, and the question is, did fantasy come to props or did the props come to fantasy?
Yeah,
Well, the fact of the matter is, fantasy has always had props, okay? And I think the props came to fantasy is where it came.
absolutely.
And also, I have to say this to the fantasy world of the people out there, the guys that you've got now you're working with. I don't think you find any better sources of information for injuries than you do at fantasy sites. Very good sites.
Absolutely. And Draft Sharks does a phenomenal job. We have a link on that at ourlads.com. So if you go to ourlads, you got the fantasy section, you click that, and it goes right to basically a link that we have with Draft Sharks. And it's got wall to wall. All it is are injury updates on what's going on with players. And so it's awesome. And then they also have this cool thing called Injury Predictor. This is actually how I found them out. So they act not because I don't look at it because I want to know what they're thinking about as far as their future injury situation, because to me that's, who knows, but it makes sense to me because basically what they do is they outline all the injuries the player's had over his career. They say, okay, take a look at, all right, this player was injured September 14th, week 3, 2019. He had an ankle injury, missed 6 weeks. Missed time the next year because of this, that, and the other thing. So basically, it's letting you know that here's a player that has an injury history. So if you're going to take him in your fantasy team, be aware that he hasn't played a full 16 or 17 games in a season yet. So if you take him, you better have somebody to back him up. So that's the reason they do it in fantasy. But I think it's an awesome tool for anybody that's interested in wagering or following players because it gives you their whole injury history. And it also, like I said, can tell you whether or not you think there's a specific player that is injury prone.
I think that's absolutely awesome. And the information like that is critical. It's really nice to know if you're going to add a player to your team, welcome to the team. But who are you adding? Are you adding somebody that's likely to be on the IR 3 weeks from now, or at least once or twice before the season ends, situations like that? I think that's a really, really keen stat that you're talking about at Draft Sharks.
Okay, now what we want to do is go over our NFL plays. Now, tonight, by the time this show is posted, the game will probably be kicking off not too much longer after that. But I thought it was too good of a game for us to not talk about, Miami and Cincinnati. And I did take Miami in the 4 in this game. And I'll tell you why I took Miami. I said this last week in the Buffalo game. I stood away from that game because I had taken Miami the first couple of weeks, and they were a top pick for me the week that they come back to beat Baltimore. So I didn't think it was a mirage of what was going on. And that's why I'm taking them here. I think I was a little surprised that it's a 3.5 point spread. They're getting about plus 170 on the money line. I'm taking the 4. But I look, Cincinnati, yeah, they beat the Jets, but again, Joe Flacco. I mean, and the Jets made typical stupid plays to let Cincinnati win the game as easily as they won it. That's not Miami. And I also think that it means something when a team is off to a start like this that's not used to it, and then they get the prime time game. This is something that, hey, wait a second, the whole nation hasn't seen us yet. They don't know how good we are. They don't, so even though they had the emotional win last week, this is their opportunity to show everybody that we are for real. And I think because of that reason, I'm taking the points. I think it's going to be a close football game, but even if they lose, I'll grab the 4.
You bring out a real good point about Miami in the football game, Greg, and I can start the other side with Cincinnati and the do factor for them, probably maybe at least to start the season on paper, the more talented football team. But they have the hex about them, the Super Bowl loser jinx,
Yeah.
the fact that they won more games last year than they did their previous 3 years combined. That's an automatic fade when these teams come favored, and Cincinnati is suffering from that right now. But I'm going to say this about Miami's improvement this year, despite the fact that they were manhandled by Buffalo last week, but they still won the football game. Don't tell them they were manhandled. They still won the football game. Here's proof in the pudding about the Miami's improvement this football season here. We call this out in the newsletter. Last year, the Miami Dolphins had 3 red zone touchdowns over the course of their 17 games.
That's
3.
crazy.
This year so far they have
Yeah.
6. Okay, they've doubled them already. Okay, hence the improvement you're seeing from Miami is real. Okay, and it's because of the talent they've got on this football team. Now, whether or not Tua Tagovailoa starts tonight, that's the big question. That's why the game moved 3 points. Basically, it moved 3 points because of that, and I'm going to tell you also why. Because the odds makers felt that Cincinnati should have been a larger favorite than they opened them up at. And when they had the chance to move him up there, they did just that. They moved him up because of this Tagovailoa maybe not playing situation. So that's why it goes from 1.5 to 3.5 or 4.5. So we'll see whether or not they're right or they're wrong. But there's no denying the fact this is a vastly improved Miami Dolphin football team, and Cincinnati still got that hex on them. And because of that, I'm with you. I have to play the points with the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah, I'll tell you right now, if this game was a regular Sunday game, I wouldn't take it. But I think it means a lot that they're going to be able to prove themselves on national TV. That's how I feel about this. And again, when you're getting a team also that's just basically 3-0, that's playing this good, and everything is working, and you're going to give them points, okay, take it. So.
Yeah, they want to walk off the field, Greg, showing the football world that last week was not a fluke.
Yeah, or the Baltimore game.
Yes, that's exactly what they want to prove.
And by the way, and you're of course live down in South Florida, and I don't have time to watch all these post game analysis and stuff, but from the people who I have heard, I have a few places I watch and listen to. I didn't hear it, and I'm surprised, but I'm sure it was talked about. To me, I thought that was quintessential Miami taking advantage of home weather.
Unquestionably.
Because Josh Allen looked dizzy. But here. I was like, what is he doing? Like the end of the first half, what is he doing? Why are you throwing the ball with 3 seconds left? What did you think you were going to accomplish there? Why didn't you just kick the field goal? That made no sense. And then at the end of the game with that skip throw, people are trying to analyze, Josh Allen's not, this, and he's got to improve. What are you talking about? I've never seen Josh Allen make such a bad throw in his life when it mattered so much in the last year since he's become a star quarterback. That had everything to do with him just being completely out of it because of the weather in my mind.
It's unfair to the point where the National Football League needs to step in. We know this history. We know the story. The Miami Dolphins sit in the shade side of the stadium. They put the visitor in the sun side of the stadium. And September in Miami, it's a sauna. It's exactly what it is, a sauna. They were dropping like flies in the Buffalo sideline. Miami players were doing pretty good.
Yeah.
So, it took a big toll on the Buffalo Bills, unquestionably. And as you mentioned, Josh Allen was the proof in the pudding.
And by the way, this whole thing about, they had like the ball for 40 minutes. That probably wasn't a good thing. They were on the field for too long.
They were drained.
That's a lot of plays that they have to play, even though the defense, but still, they're used to it. So come on. But here's the thing. If you're going to schedule that, and I don't know what the schedule is for Miami Buffalo, all I know is if you're going to schedule Buffalo Miami in September, in Miami, you better schedule Miami at Buffalo in December.
Yeah, and the evening up of this.
And then I'm okay with it because both teams have to deal with it.
Right.
Okay, now next one I want to talk about is Jacksonville with the Eagles. And now this is another test for Jacksonville because we know the Chargers had a ton of injuries, and it was just an ugly, ugly game. For the Chargers. But as we mentioned before, I do think Jacksonville's for real enough because they have players. If you look at it, just look at they got edge rushers. They got this kid Lloyd at linebacker that is for real. They got the kid Fodokasi from the Jets who's a run stuffer. Their secondary's improved. And they have Peterson who knows what he's doing as a head coach. So this is a for real team, but they're going to have to go back to back on the road. One all the way to the West Coast, back to the East Coast here, up in Philly for Jacksonville, and it's asking a lot, but I'm still taking Jacksonville because it's a 7-point spread, and I think they played so well so far this season or the last couple of weeks that I think if they lose the spread, they're going to lose it late.
I think the most stunning thing to me that I came across, I sort of shared it in the newsletter this week, was the fact that if this were a playoff game this week, Philadelphia would be the number 1 seed, and Jacksonville would be the number 2 seed. This would be for the NFC Championship
Yeah,
game,
right.
okay? Because of where they
Sure.
stand. Jacksonville's leading the South with a 2-1 record. They'd be the number 2 seed. Philadelphia, the best record in the National Football League in the NFC side of things. They'd be the number 1 seed. But obviously,
Yeah.
that's mythical. What is at play in here, I think that is the storyline, is Doug Peterson coming back to Philadelphia as
Awesome.
Jacksonville's
Yes.
head coach.
Awesome.
Yeah, yes, that's going to be what the press is going to be all over in the football game.
Another
The fact,
advantage for Jacksonville.
yeah, because he was fired by the Eagles. He didn't walk away,
Let's
retire.
win
He was
one for the
fired.
Gipper.
Yes, big chip on his shoulder coming into the contest there. But we went the other way in the newsletter. And why did we go the other way in the newsletter when you make all these cases for a team that's playing well, the coach, the chip, the
Yeah.
everything like that? Simple. Teams in the National Football League that start out 3-0, they're awesome at home in game number 4. That's the Philadelphia Eagles in this particular football game. Then you throw in the Doug Peterson Achilles heel, if you will, the fact that you put him in the second of back-to-back road games in his
Yeah.
career. He's 0-10 to the
Oh.
spread. Never covered a
Not
number.
good.
No. So I'm going to stay at home with the hotter hand here in the Philadelphia Eagles to win the game and go to the Super Bowl.
Yeah. Don't get too hot too early.
Okay.
Buffalo, Baltimore, and we have two of the most exciting quarterbacks going right now, Allen and Jackson. So if you had to pick one of those two quarterbacks to be your quarterback to take you to the Super Bowl this year, who would it be this year?
I don't think there's even a question about it. I know Lamar Jackson's having a great year. He's playing for a contract. He bet on himself. Good for him and all those things. Josh Allen's the best quarterback, I think, in the AFC. I'm putting him even ahead of Patrick Mahomes for talent, okay? That's the reason we predicted the Super Bowl this year
Yes.
to be Buffalo and Kansas City because of Josh Allen in a football game like this. Baltimore, you can make a good case for them. He's terrific as an underdog. Lamar Jackson, he's got a terrific record in the National Football League as it is. But now you've got Josh Allen coming in here off a loss in a game in which they destroyed the opponent in the total yardage in the football game. Now, here's the other part to this game that if we were sitting in a bar and I was talking to you and I would say to you, Greg, I would say, let me ask you this. You got a matchup on the card this week, and you got one team that's playing. They're the worst defense in the National Football League, and they just won a game. And they're playing the best defense in the National Football League, and they just lost a game. Who do you want? I want the best defense that's off a loss. That's the Buffalo Bills. Against the worst defense that's off a win, that's Baltimore.
Sure.
That's so
Makes
statistically, that's where I'm looking at.
Okay.
Why I'm looking
All
at
right.
Buffalo. Okay?
Yeah, I mean, I look at it as I know Buffalo last year they did lose a couple of games back to back, and I remember at that point it was like, oh, is there a little chink in their armor? What's going on? So can they lose back to back? Of course they can. They can go to Baltimore and do it, but yeah, I just think like you said, they were so upset about how they let that one get away. So that they're going to be emotionally ready for this one. And Baltimore, they're, I think that what they've done is they have taken advantage a little bit too. If you look at it, I mean they beat the Jets, and the Patriots aren't exactly playing all that great. Mac Jones gets hurt also, and they gave that game away late in the game with turnovers. They're a good team, Baltimore. They're an exciting team to watch this season. Jackson is playing at an elite level again because he now has a little bit more weapons than he's had before, so that's important. But Buffalo's a better team. I don't think there's any question about that. And when you're coming off a loss and you're the better team, and this isn't like Buffalo like last week when they were a 6-point road dog. Now they're just road favorite. Now they're just a 3-point road favorite. So the point spread makes the difference. If they're 6, I'm thinking differently. At 3, it's almost like picking the winner. So,
Well, there's another neat little stat in here that because of the closeness to which Buffalo played last week, you look at Sean McDermott and what he's done in his career in games after a game was decided by a field goal or less. He's been in 14 of them. He's only lost to the spread one time. 11, 1, and 2 to the number.
Very
So
nice.
off a close call loss, Buffalo Bills for me.
Also, Baltimore just 2-5 against the spread in their last 7. as a home favorite. The last game I wanted to bring up before I run through the NFL and we take our quick break is Kansas City and Tampa Bay rematch of the 2020 Super Bowl. And what I find ironic is, remember in that Super Bowl win by Tampa Bay, Kansas City had all those injuries on the offensive line, and Tampa Bay took advantage of it. Well, Kansas City gets an opportunity to take advantage of Tampa Bay's offensive line injuries. And I would think that they're salivating over that, considering what happened in the Super Bowl. It looks like they should be okay health-wise at receiver because Evans comes off the suspension list. Julio Jones should play next week. Cage is there, so that shouldn't be an issue anymore. But Tampa Bay, until they can get completely healthy along that offensive line, I think that's going to be a problem for them. I'm not taking the game. I know it sounds like I'm taking Kansas City, but I'm just not taking the game because, as we saw last week when we went with the Colts, and it was proven true, is that I just, if you look at it, Kansas City doesn't have that number one receiver yet. I can't look at Juju Smith and say that he's firmly grasped or taken that away, and I'm the man now. I don't know that. And Clyde Edwards-Helaire is their number one running back. He had I think he had 13 touches in the entire game. They're going back to doing what they did a few years ago, which was not successful. They're completely ignoring the running game. They've got to establish the run more. Now, whether or not they feel they can do that with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I don't know. But I think until they start running the ball more, I don't think they could be a complete team.
I agree on all counts about the Kansas City Chiefs football team. I don't think they're a complete football team. They may be by the end of the football season, and I know they've got this monster revenge chip on their shoulder from losing to Tampa Bay in the Super Bowl game. And a good point you mentioned here, it was KC's offensive line that was really, really a shell of itself, and now it's Tampa Bay suffering from the same problem. But do you want to lay points into a quarterback that is 11-1-1 to the spread as a home dog in his career?
No.
Do you want to lay points to a quarterback at home who's off a home loss in his previous
Not when
game?
that quarterback's Tom Brady.
And to a quarterback that's pissed as all get out from the way he performed last week, too, as well. So I say it's Tampa or nothing, personally, for me in the football game.
And I can see that. That's the thing. The only thing I'm worried about is that offensive line. And Kansas City is another step up as far as talent, because we saw what happened with Green Bay last week. Difference was, I think Green Bay's a little bit better defensively than the Chiefs, but Kansas City is still a little bit more electrifying on offense, because Green Bay's kind of got to get those young receivers a little bit more playing time, a little bit more experience before they can be a complete team. Okay, so what we're going to do is take our last break. As I mentioned, we've got our fantasy football report, and then we're going to come back, and then we're going to wrap things up. I'm going to go around the NFL and do a quick look around. So let's talk some fantasy football and be right back. Let's talk some fantasy football, Jared. Good to talk to you again as we enter week 4 in the NFL. The month of September is already gone. As far as, Thursday, we still have that game coming up later tonight with Cincinnati and Miami, and then it's off to October.
Week 4. I mean, it feels like it should still be week 2, but it also kind of feels like it's already week 12. So,
I will say this though: the injuries that we really haven't had a whole lot of injuries. I think this season with the 17-game schedule, I think we're going through a transition in the NFL. With the 17-game schedule, I think everybody decided, and then we're one less preseason game, so hardly anybody's playing their players in the preseason now to avoid the injuries. No coincidence. We haven't had a whole lot of injuries. That also includes all the new rules, and players are getting less injured during camp. And also, so that's nice. But what we're also seeing an effect of that is a very nutty September. First 4 or 5. Well, we've been through 3, but at some point the offenses are going to start clicking because they haven't looked very good so far. And I think this is just what you're going to get when you're not practicing as much, when you're not playing your starters as much. And then you feel like, hey, you know what? Even if we start 1-3, we have a chance. Or if we start 1-4, we have a chance. We got that extra game. So I don't think they're looking at the early season or at least September as that much of a big deal as they used to.
Yeah, I think that's fair. The other thing with the offense is that you're right, there hasn't been a ton of skill position player injuries, but I feel like there's been a lot of key offensive line injuries, and that's really affecting some of these offenses. I mean, Tampa Bay comes to mind. That offensive line is really struggling. Leonard Fournette can't get going. And of course, they've had wide receiver injuries too, which are hurting. But then, just this past week, you have the Niners left tackle Trent Williams goes down with a high ankle sprain. He's gonna miss a month plus. You have the Chargers; they lose their stud left tackle Rashawn Slater for the rest of the season. So there are some high-end offenses with iffy O-lines right now.
You know what? And maybe with that, we'll tell the coaches is, hey, you know what? Maybe because the offensive line, and that is one group that needs to learn to play with each other, and especially with free agency and so forth, and they need more and more practice time together. And we don't baby these guys like we baby the rest of them, because look at all the injuries. Maybe it backfired that we asked them to go from 50% to 100%,
yep.
and they're too big. They're too big athletically in order to withstand that. So maybe that's something that next year some coaches will go, you know what, we're going to play the offensive linemen like we used to in the old days. We're not going to rest them as much, because that kind of backfired on us last year.
There's so much science and analytics involved nowadays, which is good, but I feel like maybe we're still figuring out how to interpret this stuff and apply it.
All right, so let's get right to it. We'll start first of all. You mentioned Trent Williams, so he's out for a while. That's big, because San Francisco, when you looked at their offensive line this year, you knew they were going to have issues on the interior. You said, okay, they're safe on the outside. Well, they're not safe on the outside any longer. Nobody's going to have Jimmy Garoppolo on their fantasy team, but as far as everybody else on San Francisco, that's a pretty big worry.
It definitely doesn't help, and I think it might hurt George Kittle the most, because he might be needed to block more now. He might be playing left tackle for half of these games and not out in pass routes like we want him to. So we'll get our first look at that this weekend, how they deploy Kittle without Trent Williams.
All right, and then another team that's got offensive line issues, you mentioned them too, the Chargers. They've got a lot of injuries. Herbert, even though he played, which I thought was a disaster, they should never have played him. Anyway, the fact is that team has got injuries on defense, injuries on offense. So fantasy-wise, though, look, if you have them on defense, you're probably better off looking for another team right now. But if you have some of their players on offense, as long as Herbert's the quarterback, I think you're okay, of course. But, Keenan Allen's also injured. So update the key injuries for the Chargers fantasy-wise.
Yeah, and what I've read and heard from some of the doctors that I follow is that Herbert should just progressively get better week by week. So he should be better this week than he was last week. They have another nice matchup here against Houston. So I think the offense will be better this week, but they did lose their left tackle, Rashawn Slater. So that's an issue for that team. Keenan Allen, limited practice on Wednesday. We'll see what he does the rest of the week. It sounded like he was kind of close to playing last week. So I'm tentatively expecting Allen to be back for Sunday's game.
What do you think was the biggest reason why the offense was so discombobulated last week?
One of the things is that Jacksonville's defense is legit. That is a legit
I picked them up
defense.
On my fantasy team.
Yeah, they're going to be tough all year. So it was a tough matchup. And I just think Herbert, was clearly not at 100%. They lose Slater during the game. Just a lot of different factors. I think the biggest one was just the Jags defense is for real.
Yeah, and that was I had a choice. Do I take Jacksonville or the Colts on defense? And I decided to go with Jacksonville. And I looked and the Colts, I think they're going to do much better because their schedule is going to start opening up. They're going to play a lot of teams that they should be able to, and Leonard will be back. But with Jacksonville, you talk about Lloyd already is doing exactly what he was asked to do there. He's already got 2 interceptions. He's a great cover linebacker. You throw him in there with the edge rushers they have now. And then the tackle they got from the Jets, Fotokasi, is a really good run stuffer. All of a sudden, they have a really intriguing front seven. And, they brought the NFL's tackle leader in from Atlanta. And then you talk about the secondary also has some pretty good players, too. So, yeah, I agree with you. I think, and now they're going to get tested, of course, this week against the Eagles. That's going to be a nice matchup.
Yes. Well, we thought last week was a test against the Chargers, and they passed that. So, and the offense, too, in Jacksonville is looking very good under Doug Peterson. Trevor Lawrence taking a step forward, so that the Jags could be a playoff team.
Now, we talked about Zay Jones, speaking of Jacksonville, and he had a big week last week. So what do you think overall? Is it still Kirk? If you had to decide right now, is it still Kirk until Zay Jones maybe even picks it up a little bit more?
Yes, it's still Kirk, I think, is the guy you want in Jacksonville. He's leading the way in targets. I expect that to continue. But Zay Jones should probably be rostered in most fantasy leagues, and I think he's someone you can be considering for your final wide receiver spot.
Speaking of Jacksonville, and I picked him up on defense and picking up players. We talked a couple weeks ago about our respective teams, and we hadn't made any moves at that point. Well, I finally, for the first time, not only did I make my first move with defense, but I made a few other moves, and I went ahead and I picked up Russell Gage, and I picked up Russell Gage, and we talked about this. I think it was, I don't know if it was last week or I think it was last week off the air, about Elijah Moore, and who was the other? Gallup. And I kept Moore. But at this point, I was like, you know what? I can get Russell Gage. And I don't think I mentioned this, but in our fantasy league, when this regular season's over and we crown a champion, we actually go, any players that are in the NFL playoffs, we use them, we keep them. So we have like a second fantasy season. So it's kind of cool. So you want to draft guys that are like in a playoff or Super Bowl contender. So that's what put me over the top. Russell Gage is on Tampa Bay and Elijah Moore's on the Jets. But without that, Russell Gage, Elijah Moore, which way would you go?
Because
I know all those Tampa Bay receivers are coming back. And by the way, I do have Julio Jones on my roster.
I was just going to say, with the Bucs receivers getting healthy, I might lean Elijah Moore's way, but I have no idea what to make of Zach Wilson and what he's going to mean to this passing game. Elijah Moore's week 3 was encouraging. He got the 10 targets. The volume kind of hadn't been there for him. So as long as he stays in that 20% target share range, I do think Elijah Moore is going to be fine going forward.
Yeah, I agree because the thing is if it's Joe Flacco all season, you get the feeling he's in love with Wilson, but we don't know with Zach what he's going to do once he steps on the field on Sunday.
The other thing with the Jets, I don't know if you saw this, they set the NFL record for the most pass attempts through the first 3 games of the season. I think Flacco threw it like 152 times. So that's it's good. It's good, but it's not going to continue.
No,
the pass volume is going to come way down.
That's another team that has concerns at tackle too. So Jets are actually going to be playing the rookie, and Connor McDermott is going to start at tackle as well. So it's Connor McDermott and Max Mitchell, but Steelers no TJ Watt. So that'll help a little bit. Yeah. Also, on my fantasy team, not only did I pick up Russell Gage, who else did I pick up? Once I remember it, I'll let you know. But let's get to some of these others, because this one definitely helps my team. We talked about this also a couple of weeks ago, that I had Chicago's backup running back, and Montgomery, we knew was the starter. So unless there was an injury, can't do much there. But there you go. You got the injury. Now, this is the worst thing, though, for fantasy owners. The guy gets injured, not in practice, not in warm-ups. He gets injured at the beginning of the game, so you can't use him during the game. And he has a great game against a bad team, which you would have started him. And then immediately you hear the head coach go, he's day-to-day. I don't want to hear he's day-to-day, and then you can just start him again next Sunday, and I get nothing out of this. So I get the feeling, though, Herbert's probably going to wind up getting some additional touches on Sunday, and I would probably start him.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm not buying that Montgomery's going to play on Sunday.
I agree.
He was quickly ruled out of that game last weekend, which generally means a pretty significant injury. And then he did not practice on Wednesday. So we'll see what he does these next 2 days. But I'm kind of betting that Herbert's going to be the guy this weekend.
He's a must start if he plays, especially against the Giants.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, we have him like RB 16 in our rankings, like a 16th ranked running back. So
by the way, I was just thinking about it. So the other receiver I picked up was Valdez-Scantling.
Yeah.
So, still, I have depth. Yeah. He's not a starter. I've got enough receivers, but as a depth guy, I have to remember who I dropped for him. Maybe that'll make some sense when I let you know who I dropped for him. Okay. Detroit, Minnesota, crazy game last week. Both top running backs got hurt, so that affects possibly those respective players coming up on Sunday, Swift and Cook.
Yes, Swift. It sounds like they're going to hold Swift out for the next 2 games, and then they have a week 6 bye. So he'd get 3 weeks of rest with that shoulder. That's what it sounds like they're leaning towards doing with him. That's going to make Jamal Williams.
That's a starter.
The Lions.
I'd start him.
Oh, easy. Oh, we have him ranked 12th among running backs this week, I believe.
Great.
That O-line is mauling people,
absolutely,
opening up massive holes. Jamal Williams is a good player. He's not as explosive as DeAndre Swift, but he's a good player. He can do some stuff in the passing game. And they played the Seahawks this week. The matchup couldn't get any better. So Williams, if you have him, I'd be getting him in your starting lineup.
All you got to do is take a look at how Willie played at BYU. Very good running back.
Yeah, he's a good player.
Got lost at Green Bay. They tried to play him, but Aaron Jones was just too good. and there's
Yes.
no room for him. So, but yes, a
Yep.
good football player. So Cook, if he does now, is this definite? If Cook doesn't play, you start Madison.
Yeah. Do you remember what Madison did in the games Cook missed last season? He was a monster. He's 90% of Dalvin Cook. He's a really good back. He can do just as well in the passing game as Dalvin Cook. Like, Madison's going to get 20 to 25 touches if Cook doesn't play in this game. And I actually think Cook's going to play. He's played through the shoulder injury before. Remember that Steelers game last night, and Cook was coming off the same injury, and he had a massive game. So I think he's going to end up giving it a go. But if not, Madison's like a top 10 running back play.
Yeah, Minnesota, a little bit weird though, especially at receiver, because Jefferson, after we know how good he is. So would you be concerned a little bit about what's going on there?
No, this is just kind of the ebbs and flows of the NFL season, I think. Like, defenses are obviously bracketing him, trying to take him away. We saw Adam Thielen and KJ Osborne score last week, kind of taking advantage of the softer coverage. So I think, things will start to shift back Jefferson's way going forward. I'm not worried.
Okay. And by the way, speaking of those Tampa Bay wide receivers, so what's the latest?
So Mike Evans is back. We know that. He was on suspension. Chris Godwin returned to a limited practice on Wednesday, so it seems like he has a chance to return this week. If not this week, probably next week. And then I think Julio Jones will be back this week as well. So it'll be interesting to see, how they rotate those guys in alongside Russell Gage.
So they'll have everybody but Godwin, more than likely.
More than likely. I think Godwin has a chance, but I think they'll have the other three at least.
What would you do if you had to decide between Gage or Jones?
I'd probably lean Gage. I want to see Jones.
You want to see Jones make
make it through a game healthy,
because we hear a lot of talking, and he did get some opportunities week one.
Yeah, he looked good before he got hurt again.
Before he got hurt again. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's what I think. Okay. Also, McCaffrey banged up.
Yeah, thigh injury. Did not practice Wednesday, which I was like, it's probably just a rest day. He got 20-something carries last week, but he didn't practice again on Thursday. So it seems like there's a chance that he misses Sunday's game.
Dabs for Green Bay finally came through.
Oh, yeah.
We've been talking about him for a couple of months, and this is a rookie, so it's going to take him time. But this is a huge confidence builder. I'm assuming he was one of the top pickups this week.
Yeah, he must have been. I mean, he was rostered in most of the leagues I'm in already, but if he's available, he should be picked up. I wouldn't be surprised if he leads the Packers wide receivers in fantasy points the rest of the season.
All right. Any other key injuries that we should keep an eye on?
Amon-Ra St. Brown is banged up for the Lions. We'll keep an eye on that one. What else? The Giants wide receivers are all sorts of banged up. It does look like
Shepard's back. Another ACL for Shepard, huh?
Yeah, Shepard's done for the season. Tony and Robinson are going to be out again this week, so that's a mess. I think Dalton Schultz is going to be back for the Cowboys this week. So if you were, waiting on him, I think you'll have him for week 4.
Who's that?
Dalton Schultz.
Oh, okay. And what about Gallup?
Gallup, I thought he was going to play last week. He said he wasn't mentally ready, just, from all the missed practice time. He says his knee's ready to go. So I think we'll see him on Sunday. I wouldn't want to use him in fantasy lineups. I think we want to see him get back to a full-time role. I'll probably even wait until Dak Prescott is back before we use Michael Gallup, but he's definitely worth stashing.
Would you start A.J. Dillon this week?
Probably. It depends who the other options are. We have him as like a top 20 running back. I think he's right around like 18 or 19 in our rankings.
Yeah, because I drafted him to start every week, but then obviously the matchup was not good last week, and it's a little bit better, but not a whole lot better because the Patriots are a really good defense as well, and he didn't do much last week, but he did get enough touches.
Yeah, the nice thing about the matchup this week is the Packers should crush New England, right, with Brian Hoyer under center, so they should be up double digits in the second half and just feeding Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon.
All right. Now, we promised that I was going to ask you these questions each week or every 2 weeks because Matt comes on when you're not here. So let's go through it quickly. Team of the week. Who is your team of the week?
It's got to be the Detroit Lions. If you look at the Vegas implied totals, what the sportsbooks are projecting these teams to score, the Lions are projected to score the third most points of the week. It's the Bills.
That's an offense that's not having any problems.
No, it's not. And again, they do have some injuries, so we'll see how that shakes out. But I think so for fantasy, I think that means Jared Goff is actually a viable spot starter option for this week. Again, he's been okay, but you look at that implied total and you look at the matchup.
That's right.
Seattle is 28th against quarterbacks according to our numbers, so it's a great matchup.
All right, player of the week.
I got Kamara here. He's been disappointing so far. I think this is the week he gets going. You look at his usage last week, it was everything you want out of a running back. He played 70% of the Saints snaps. He got 15 of the Saints 20 running back carries, and he saw 7 targets. He just only happened to catch 2 of those targets. He didn't score a touchdown, so it wasn't a great fantasy day. But again, the usage is there, and this matchup against Minnesota's been struggling against the run so far. So I think this is kind of the Kamara breakout week for the year.
You always wonder about quarterbacks having issues when your running back is 2 of 7 on targets. Yeah. That's not good.
Yes.
All right, and give me a sleeper of the week, a player that you think may be ready to break out, somebody that could be on the waiver wire. Maybe you just picked them up, or maybe you can steal him off a roster, or maybe, be patient because he's about to break out on your roster.
Treylon Burks, the Titans rookie wide receiver. We've seen a bunch of these rookie wide receivers break out already. Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, Drake London. I think Burks is the next one to break out. He had been limited in playing time the first couple of weeks, but still drawing a decent amount of targets. Last week, he finally got full playing time. He was on the field for 97% of the Titans pass play. So if he's getting that type of playing time, I think he's good enough to bust out.
And that's huge for Tennessee because they need that weapon and wide receiver to go along with the running game. Lewan just, by the way, speaking of another offensive lineman out for the year. But I think Tennessee had to be reasonable even going into the season that they couldn't count on Taylor Lewan. There's always been injury issues with Lewan over the past couple of years. It's not a surprise he's out now.
Yeah, not as dominant as he used to be anyways when he's on the field. So I'm definitely worried about that Titans running game. Henry has been inefficient for the most part so far. But again, I do think I think Burks is going to get going.
I certainly hope Tennessee, that's my point was, I think they should have realized that was a possibility and protected themselves. So we'll see if they felt they've got the right player to back him up. All right, Jared. So what's going on at Draft Sharks? What are you working on a regular basis? Like, what was the big story this week?
We did our first dynasty buy, sell, hold report of the season. So, some guys to trade for in dynasty leagues, some guys to trade away, some to kind of hang on to. So we did that. We'll be doing a couple more of those this year. Other than that, it's, really just keeping those projections updated, the projections that fuel all the rankings. If you're playing DFS, we have our DFS lineup optimizer to use. So that's kind of what chews up most of my time every week.
And then next week, Matt, he briefly told me about what we're going to talk about. Can you tease our audience on what we're going to be talking about?
I'm not sure what you guys are going to be talking about.
Oh, you didn't read the emails? So yeah, he was talking about the it's a player props.
The pick'em stuff. Okay.
And how we can
so Underdog, Underdog Fantasy. If you don't have that app, download it. It's awesome. But they have a game called Pick'em where it's just player props, but you have to pick at least 2 of them, and you can pick as many as like 5, and you have to hit them all to win. But if you hit 2 of them, it's like 3 times your money. If you hit 3, it's like 6 times your money.
You have to win by getting the projection right.
Yeah, over under. So they'll say, for tonight, they'll say, Joe Mixon over under 65.5 rushing.
You got to get that right.
You got to pick higher or lower.
Okay.
Yeah,
interesting. So. All right. Well, I look forward to talking to Matt about that next week, and then we'll get back to doing what we do this week in a couple of weeks. Jared, appreciate it. And by the way, it's going to go really fast, and then we're going to be talking golf in January. I can't. But I understand what you're saying. All right, Jared, appreciate it. We'll talk to you again in a couple of weeks.
Right. Thanks, Greg. See ya.
All right, Mark. So that's our fantasy football segment. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you fast forwarded, then I guess you didn't care. Let's wrap things up and go around the NFL. As we do that, there's finally a game over in Europe. So I guess it's another London game, which is nice. I like these because you can get it's like living on the West Coast. For us East Coasters, we get up in the morning and watch a game like they do. They get to watch wall-to-wall NFL games at 10 o'clock their time. So this is a 9:30 Eastern game, Minnesota, New Orleans. I'm staying away from this game because I don't know. I don't know what's going on with the Saints. Well, I kind of do. Because Dennis Allen is there and Winston looks terrible so far. But I don't even know what's going on with Minnesota. They should have lost last week. So, I can't touch the game.
Well, you remember, Greg, yesterday when we did our video cast, our Against the Spread video cast with Victor King and Andy Isco from Vegas. Andy mentioned the fact that he'll have to be up at 6:30 in the morning to watch this in Vegas, West Coast time.
I'll put the DVR on
in the morning. Yeah, unbelievable. But
unless he wants to stay up.
or videotape it.
Or you
One or
can
the
stay up
other.
all night.
Yeah, he could. He could do just
It's
that. Right.
Vegas.
Yes, exactly
Yeah.
right. But he's not going to be staying up for those reasons, believe me. I mean, But anyway, as far as this matchup goes in this football game here, I think statistically this is a really, really good looking play for the New Orleans Saints coming into the contest here. And the reason I'm mentioning that is if you look at and you grade teams, and I love doing that this way, especially out of the Midweek Alert newsletter, how the teams come into the football games based upon what they did statistically their last game. New Orleans lost the game but won the yards by over 100 yards. Minnesota won the game but lost the yards in dramatic late style fashion against the Detroit Lions. So you have that collision working in New Orleans' favor in this game. The other thing you have working in this game is the team, since they've been playing in London, England, that come in off a straight up and favorite loss in their previous game before going across the pond, as the New Orleans Saints are doing in a football game like this. They're 7-3 straight up and against the spread in this particular role here. I think this is a nice spot for the New Orleans Saints here to be away from the pressures of home, taking points against a Minnesota football team that I still think is looking to find itself under their new head coach. I'm going to play New Orleans plus the points.
All right. Also, I don't know why Dallas is only a 3-point favorite against Washington. This is a line that I'm scratching my head. Dallas was one of my plays last week. Took advantage of the point spread with the Giants. I'm not. Can you explain to me why they're only a 3-point favorite? I mean, why? Why? Because Prescott's not playing?
Well, even when he plays, he hasn't been a factor.
Yeah.
I mean, hardly much of a factor. In fact, they were much better off when Pollard was in the lineup. When he was healthy, he was outperforming him. But I think the reason they're the favorite is they're the better football team on paper.
I mean, why
anyway.
is Washington only getting 3? Only getting 3. I mean, I would have thought this would have been like a 5 or 6 point spread. Dallas is clearly a better team than Washington.
Well, this is a Dallas football team that took points from the New York Giants
and then they proved them wrong. They won the game.
Right. And there is a Cooper gold rush going on in Dallas right now these days.
Yeah.
Okay, so he stepped up and done a terrific job in both of his relief roles so far for this football program here. What you've got in Washington is a quarterback that just loves to get sacked. I don't think there's any other way to put it with Carson Wentz. I mean, 9 sacks last week. 9 sacks.
That's not going to get any better this week.
No. In fact, if it happens this week, we're going to be talking about the former starting quarterback, Carson Wentz. So Washington, I don't think, is ready to take advantage of a Dallas Cowboy football team that is really doing a good job keeping it together until Dak Prescott gets back. And for that reason, I would back the Cowboys at home in a win situation.
And then over the top, the one that sealed it for me, the Cowboys are 18-2 against the spread their last 20 as a division favorite of more than 2. So they have dominated their division for several years in this role. I don't think that's going to change any. Also, by the way, the Giants, speaking of them, they're a 3-point favorite now over Chicago, but I took the Bears just because, again, I just can't. The Giants 2-7-1 against the spread, last 10 as a home favorite. I just can't take I have to go against the Giants right now while they're a favorite, especially over a team that's actually 2-1. They've beaten the Giants the last 3 years, and they're playing better than people thought. I know they're not beating juggernauts, but they did beat San Francisco week 1. I mean, I'm just Giants. They got all sorts of receiver. By the way, that was one of the things we talked about on the fantasy report. If you didn't check that out, talked about the Giants' injuries at wide receiver. Their offensive line's bad. I don't know. I'm taking the points in that one.
I would take the points here too, but what is most mystifying to me of all is the fact that when the final gun in this game sounds, one of these teams is going to be 3-1 to begin the football season.
That?
Unbelievable.
Yes.
And then from that point thereafter, you start fading.
Yeah, right. Pretty much.
Winner.
Yeah.
Right.
Detroit's a 4-point favorite over Seattle. That's definitely a play that I like. First time Detroit's favored in the last 28 games. Campbell 8-2 against the spread as a home head coach so far in his short tenure. By the way, Pete Carroll 12-2 against the spread off back-to-back straight-up losses. I'm not going to play that into this now, and I wonder how you would advise people based on like teams like Seattle when you've got major players that are gone now. Their Hall of Fame type quarterback is gone, and he had a lot to do with these trends. So is it one of those things where you look at it and you go, I need a couple of games of proof that these trends are going to hold up with Pete Carroll as opposed to Pete Carroll, with such star quarterback.
Well, that's a really good point you bring up, and let me even it out this way or iron it out. There are trends that apply to teams. There are trends that apply to coaches. I think the trends that apply to coaches are much more valuable because their coaching tendencies, their team tendencies are gumballs that are coming out of a gumball machine. But the coach's tendencies happen because of a coach's playbook.
But keep in mind, again, Pete Carroll was basically the head coach of Seattle for as long as Russell Wilson was the quarterback there.
Exactly, and that's where I'm going with this point. Okay, now you're talking about the Pete Carroll trends, but this is a team also in Seattle that is in transition right now. All of his good players are gone. There's obviously a makeover going on in Seattle. So can you rely on those Pete Carroll stats? I don't think so. Not right now, until at least he proves to you that they can.
Yeah. And that would be if they go out and they either at least cover this game. If they don't, then it's a bad sign that you shouldn't really. Now, I have my only upset this week is I'm taking Houston over the Chargers. And it's not a strong play, but I just think that everything going on with the Chargers right now, there's a lot of bad stuff happening. There's a lot of bad vibes going on with this team right now. And I think this is a good time to take them because Houston hasn't won a game yet. So they're hungry to finally get a win. They upset the Chargers last year at home as a 13-point dog. So I think in this spot, I especially with all the injuries the Chargers are dealing with, why not take a chance on the 2-1 money line in this one?
Well, I can't disagree. The thing that concerns me is the Chargers have owned this division, okay, the AFC South. 31-7 to the spread since 1987, the Chargers against the AFC South.
I was looking at that, but then they lost last week.
Yes, they did. Okay, because why? Because Justin Herbert is 100%. Yeah. Justin Herbert's not 100% now, and Justin Herbert doesn't have 100% lineup behind him.
Exactly.
Right either. So you have to know when to say, okay, I'm hopping off this train here right now. I'll get back on it when the train's purring and running the way it should, and it's not purring and running the way it should right now. So I agree with you. I think Houston is the side.
My other top pick is your team, the Cleveland Browns, as a 1-point favorite against Atlanta. You got to like what's going on in Atlanta. They've covered all 3 games this year, but look, bad teams very rarely win back-to-back early in the season, especially when they have to face good teams like Cleveland. Cleveland, look, they're a couple plays away from being undefeated. So, how do you not like what's going on with the Browns to start their season? This is a legitimate playoff team right now. Atlanta's not. I'm all over Cleveland as the favorite in this one.
Well, again, I'm going to allude to that midweek alert newsletter here, and this is where it really comes into play here. You look at the Cleveland Browns. They have not lost the yards in any football game this football season here. There's only 4 teams in the league that could say that. Buffalo, Philadelphia, San Francisco, and Cleveland. So they're playing some really good football on the field in the stats. And I think they can take advantage of an Atlanta football team that's off that win on the West Coast. Marcus Mariota has not played well in his career in football games when his team is coming off of a underdog win, as he's doing right now. 3-10 straight up, 2-11 to the spread. I think Cleveland is the better football team. I don't care how you want to cut it, shape it. Atlanta is playing some competitive football for what they were supposed to be, but I think they're going to get back to what they were supposed to be starting in a game like this. Like, better team wins this game.
Arizona, Carolina. Carolina's a short favorite in this one. Now you got contesting trends. Cliff Kingsbury, 9-0 all time against the spread as a dog versus losing teams. Carolina has beaten Arizona the last 3 years straight up and against the spread by a total of 52 points. That's the winning margin. So they've owned Arizona the last 3 years. So those contrasting trends I thought was important to note. But because of that, I'm staying away from it.
Well, I'm gonna play the the Arizona Cardinals in this football game. You're asking Carolina to win back-to-back football games with a quarterback that is not very good, Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, they did not play all that much better last week offensively. Yeah.
No. And you were talking about Kingsbury. What he has done well is play games on the road in the National Football League as a dog, 14-4-1 to the spread, 7-0 straight up and against the spread. His last 7 as a road dog coming into this contest here. They've got revenge in this football game. I think Arizona wins the game and takes Carolina down.
Also, Pittsburgh's a 3-point favorite out of the Jets. Jets get Zach Wilson back. We'll see what difference that makes. As far as Pittsburgh, they're still going with Trubisky, so we'll see how long that takes. Tennessee, Indianapolis, that one is just too hard for me to call. Tennessee's won the last 3 straight up against the spread against the Colts. And keep in mind, even though we took the Colts last week and it came through, I'm watching that game, and boy, it is Matt Ryan. I mean, he is having all sorts of problems. I mean, he's got 7 fumbles already this season. He's just old, and teams are just going after him. Tennessee's going to go after him, so I don't know what to expect. I mean, I was probably leaning towards Tennessee, but I just that's one of those games that I don't know what to expect from either one of those teams right now.
I'd have to play the points with Tennessee here too. I think Matt Ryan's a little bit of a facade, and his better days are obviously in the rear view mirror coming in here. And the Colts have really struggled at home in division games of late, 1-6 to the spread their last 7. I think Tennessee has a much better chance of winning this game in a surprise than the Colts do winning it pulling away.
And then I'm taking the Packers and Las Vegas as the other 2 games on Sunday. I am a little bit worried, of course, with the backup quarterback situation with the Patriots and Bill Belichick getting 10 points or 9 points, whatever it's going to be. That definitely scares me. But, Green Bay covered all 3 last year as a double-digit favorite. They're 19-9 against the spread. Their last 28 as a home favorite. New England wasn't going well offensively until last week with Mac Jones, and now they got to go to whatever. I don't even know how old Hoyer is. And the Packers defense showed last week that they're pretty good. So, and then with Las Vegas, even though they're 0-3, they could easily be 3-0. They're a 2-point favorite in this one. We know what Denver is. I mean, you talk about Chicago, and the Giants could be 3-1. I mean, how is Denver 2-1? I mean, they were just playing some awful offensive football, and that's why I'm going to go ahead and take the Raiders, who have won 4 straight and covered 3 out of the last 4 against the Denver Broncos. I just can't imagine Denver going 3-1 the way things are going. And I can't imagine Las Vegas going 0-4 the way that they've actually been playing. I just think Las Vegas is still a better team than Denver right now.
I'm going to pull out the Karnak crystal ball. You remember Karnak,
yes.
Johnny Carson, right? And in this Green Bay New England football game, I think will be the birth of Bailey Zappi
in the
National Football League. When Brian Hoyer goes out with an injury, creaky as old as he is, starting quarterback for New England, who I doubt will sustain being able to play the whole football game. Okay, here comes Bailey Zappi.
Oh.
And what happens? Bailey Zappi leads New England to an upset win over Green Bay, and all of a sudden his career is made.
Hey, if he comes into the game and it's a 1-score game or something, watch out. Play the live game. Go ahead and take the Patriots.
Play it in game wagering, exactly.
Yeah.
I can't lay doubles into Bill Belichick. I know it's Brian Hoyer, but I just can't lay doubles into Bill Belichick. And you got Green Bay off a huge emotional win over Tampa Bay last week.
And then the Monday night game is really all about trends for me, because as we talked about on the fantasy football report, and by the way, we also talked about in the report about some of the other key injuries that we just went over that were important. It was McCaffrey. McCaffrey's banged up for the Panthers, so we talked about that. We also talked about the fact that Trent Williams is out. He's going to be gone for a month. That offensive line was not very good to begin with, and now they lose Williams. But the trends are all for the Niners in this one. They've won 6 out of the last 7 straight up against the spread versus the Rams. The only loss happened to be the championship game last year, but the Niners covered. The Niners are 6-1 against the spread. Their last 7 at home on Monday night versus division opponents. And even better, 14-1 against the spread. Their last 15 off a straight-up road-favored loss. And that includes they're already 1-0 this year in that spot when they lost to Chicago week 1 and then came back and won week 2. And by the way, the only game they've won and covered this year happened to be at home, which is where they're going to be against the Rams on Monday night. So that's why I'm going to go ahead and take the Niners minus the 1.
I'm probably going to lean that way with you here as well, Greg. There's a nice little stat again in the newsletter, and we can do this with our database. We call this one Between the Fives. And what it is San Francisco at home Monday night, between the fives, either a dog of 5 or less, up to a favorite of 5 or less, between the fives, 17-3, straight up and against the spread. nice role for San Francisco here. And I'm also playing against the Rams on the anti-Super Bowl winner here because it's very, very difficult to get back to the Super Bowl 2 years in a row. They're going to be tripping up somewhere along the way. This looks like a perfect trip-up spot.
Yeah, this is also a spot for the Rams to bury the Niners if they can. If they can just put because the Niners are there for the take and to bury. And if they can bury the Niners, that could be because who knows what's going on with Arizona. We know what Seattle is. And all of a sudden, the Rams could run away with this division if they win this game on Monday night. So
yeah, they could just coast, right?
All right. So before I let you go, Mark, what else is going on? I know you have, of course, the Playbook Experts YouTube channel up and running. What else is going on?
Well, check that out, the Playbook Experts YouTube channel. Go there. You'll like all the free pick videos you see from myself, Victor King, Jim Feist, and the cast of Playbook Experts. And while you're there, click on the subscribe button, and we'll let you know when the next videos are being posted. I've also got a real big weekend on tap. I had a great week. I had maybe the type of a football week that allowed me not to get any sleep over the weekend here. We used 6 games. We won them all. It was really, really nice. Our customers are thrilled.
Yeah, got a little bounce in your step when that happens. Yeah.
My wife's walking with the bounce in her step. Yeah. What can I tell you? So right now it's a good time to get on board. I got a real nice package available online at playbooksports.com. I've got an October Rama package, which is terrific. Check it out all online, playbooksports.com.
All right, that'll wrap it up. Don't forget, discussion area of the channel here on this page. Just let us know what you think. Any games at all, anything, just let us know, and we will get back to you for sure. Please don't forget to subscribe to this channel as well so you know when these shows are available immediately, especially when you need to know before like a Thursday night or Friday night. We have some games that we're covering as well. So we'll be back next week and all season long right here to cover the NFL and college football season with Marc Lawrence. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week.
Be well, Greg. Have a good weekend.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.